Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Director Watch, an AwardsWatch podcast that attempts to get inside the mind of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and maybe we go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, the executive editor here at AwardsWatch, and joining me, as always, is my co-host and partner in crime, Jay Ledbetter.
Ryan, I can't shake the feeling that we've recorded this episode before.
Yes.
It's almost like I have a sense of Déjà Vu. We're talking Déjà Vu, ladies and gentlemen. The Tony Scott series marches on. The Denzel partnership marches on. Denzel forever. Déjà Vu for life.
Jay, I know we got to get to our guest here in a second, but I got to ask, this was a hypothesis that was presented to me the other night.
Okay.
By my significant other.
Okay.
When we were watching this movie. Has Denzel Washington ever been in a outright bad movie?
I am almost certain he has, but I cannot name it off the top of my
head. I mean, like, for real, like, it is like one certainly and a half.
After he became Denzel, I think is where you kind of start it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't start the stuff early on.
No, because that's not fair to anybody.
No. But when Denzel became Denzel, did he make a bad movie?
Like, I'm talking about like a absolute garbage.
No, see, I don't know about absolute garbage. I would say probably not.
Right? Like, there's not like a movie, like every Denzel movie since probably like, I don't know, like Cry Freedom when he got first Oscar nominated, I guess is the best way to start that. He's never made like one where you're just like, yeah, I think that isn't one of the terrible movies of our time.
An abject failure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I haven't seen. I've not seen Two Guns.
Oh, Two Guns is fun.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's just like
I believe
fun
you.
Movie.
I believe you.
Yeah.
What about
like
Safe House?
Oh, with him and Reynolds?
Yeah.
Yeah, Denzel's really good in that.
But is it good?
I mean, like when I saw it, it was before Ryan Reynolds became annoying. So
he did kind of become he fell into the kind of junky action elevated by Denzel for a while. But Denzel elevates that stuff to a point where it's never terrible.
No, and you can't have a bad time. And that movie, from what I remember, it's got a pretty bleak ending and kind of resolve about it. So, and Denzel's just like, when he's in his action mode, he's pretty.
It would be a pretty bleak ending if at the end Ryan Reynolds signed his contract to become Deadpool.
Well, that's actually in the extended cut. Sorry to say that. But yeah, no, I was just thinking about that the other night, and you know, originally she said that this was on the table, you know, from her memory, but then she watched it with me, and she
as a
she
bad
loved
one.
it.
I mean, some people don't like Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Well, I don't. Yeah, but I don't think that like is.
It's not an out and out bad movie.
No, it's just like
I like that movie.
Don't remake that movie because the original was a masterpiece.
I know. My review of that on Letterboxd was, if this movie had a different title, I think its reputation would be a lot different.
Yeah, it'd be Unstoppable.
Not quite that.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, no, yes, but it would have the reputation of Unstoppable, where like people wouldn't have to like be like, oh, well, there's another movie with Walter Matthau that's pretty goddamn great. Like, they would just be like, hey, there's a pretty underrated movie with Travolta and Denzel. If
Travolta rules in that movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
I think Travolta absolutely rocks the house in that movie.
You think he's delivering the goods?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're here to talk about Déjà Vu. It's the penultimate episode of our Tony Scott movie series.
Because we're skipping Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we are definitely skipping that. That would be like,
I would like to talk about it, but
I mean, we're gonna talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But we're just not gonna talk about it today. But our guest today is a good old friend of ours. I feel like we've talked about maybe this movie and other movies definitely a ton with our guest here. He's one half of the crew over the InSession Film podcast. It's Mr. Brendan Cassidy. Brendan, welcome to Director Watch.
Oh, this feels like Déjà Vu. I got to tell you, gents, that's really the reason why I picked this specific movie, just to feel like I'm coming back home again talking to you boys. We've had a long stretch of history together, and this is a nice way to return the favor.
A little bit of I guess the great way to sit, you know, maybe like put a name on this podcast is maybe this is like a temporal pincer movement.
Well, some people have described our tenure at InSession Film as similar to a terrorist attack on a ferry. So
And now the tables have
The
turned.
similarities.
This
continue.
whole scenario is one giant palindrome. Is basically what we're saying here.
Yes.
Well, Jay is a questionable Christ-like character, wrapped up into a podcaster because
Maybe
Jay,
that makes you Moses then.
yeah, he's like he's a big Caviezel guy. Right, Jay?
Oh, personally, yes.
And if I may jump in on the whole Denzel debate, has Denzel ever been in a bad movie after Denzel became Denzel? Can you argue John Q?
Oh man, John Q's good because he's so good in it.
I
Well, that's the
have
thing, like,
not
it
seen that
is-
movie in 15 years, but
Yeah,
I remember.
but it's one of those, like-
well enough.
I mean, like it's probably one of those,
It's
right,
like a
Brendan?
3.5 star for me.
It's
with
like a
my memory.
3-star movie, probably, where you're just like, yeah, the plot of this movie is stupid and
Well,
silly,
and
but
that's the thing,
Denzel
like,
Washington just carries the shit out of this thing.
If you give that movie 3 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd, are all 3 of those stars because of Denzel Washington? I think that's
Probably.
probably what the case is.
I give a half star to Duvall in that
Okay, here's
fair.
here's
That's
the
fair.
new thesis.
because Duvall never makes bad
Denzel
choices.
has been in bad movies if Denzel wasn't in them.
Yeah, if
Denzel's
there's
been in
some
movies that would have been bad.
that means he
movies if
makes
wasn't in them.
impeccable
Absolutely.
choice. That means he's the greatest actor of all time.
Basically, I'm not
He
going to argue
is.
that.
No, he elevates things like the Book of Eli shouldn't exist, and yet
I think it's a bad movie if he's not in it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it should, but it shouldn't work, and yet it does because it's like, oh, I believe. I guess what we're saying is we're like the cult of Denzel Washington because
Well,
it's like Denzel.
there is a legitimate argument to make that Denzel was arguably the biggest and best movie star of the 2000s.
Oh,
And I feel like anyone who makes that argument, no one can push back on that. I feel like that's almost an objective statement at this.
I mean, he started off the decade with winning an Oscar for Man on Fire.
Right.
I mean, not for Training Day. Training Day. Well, he should have won one.
Should have been Man
Should
on
have been. Yeah, I was thinking about
But
that.
Ryan, we did our movie star draft recently on the main show on
Don't
AwardsWatch,
remind
and
me.
by decades, and I took Denzel, and I believe he was the first 90s 2000s guy taken.
He was, and I
Yeah.
was so angry because I should have just picked
You wanted him.
I wanted him so bad. I wanted
You
him
had
and
first
Harrison.
pick, and you took
I know.
Harrison.
I took Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
I think
that's a
that's
good
a
pick.
respectable pick.
It's a good pick.
That's a very respectable pick.
Yeah, but
That's what makes those drafts fun. Too
I
many
went
respectable picks.
I went to the I guess for that one it was like, yeah, Harrison Ford, that makes sense for that. But like really, in all honesty, and Jay knows this, my guy's Denzel. Like
You went with your head. You went with your head over
your
on
heart.
that one.
Yeah. But also, if I would have picked him at number 1, no one would have said anything bad.
No.
No one would have said a
No.
damn thing.
No.
And I that's why it's going to be my biggest regret of my life.
You're living a pretty good life.
I'm just gonna play.
Nice, man.
I'm gonna
Yes,
play
yes.
it over and over again. I'm gonna be like, I should've
Denzel still
taken
exists.
Denzel,
He's still
should've
making movies. I think he'll be fine.
Oh man, did you see him today?
Gladiator 2.
Gladiator 2. We're
what
recording
year?
this on the day of the not to timestamp this, on the day of the
Yeah.
Gladiator 2 releases. All the stills of the phone. I gotta tell you,
I was-
Jay knows that I was
I was
not.
already hyped for it. I was already hyped for it, and that just made it better.
I gotta tell you, I wasn't really big on the idea of this. And I saw those stills today, and I'm like, yeah, movies are back. Let's just give me that movie right now, please, please, and thank you.
Denzel was
Ridley.
in American Gangster. Is that his only Ridley?
I
Is
think
that his-
so.
I
Off the
think
top of
that
my
is
head,
his
yeah, I
only
think so.
Ridley. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
I like American Guy. I know you're not a big fan of that one, Jay, but I like that one.
I'll back you on that one, Ryan. I like it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. And he's looking. I guess he's like the bad guy.
One of the
Yeah.
bad guys.
One of the bad
Yeah.
guys. Paul looks good. Paul looks ripped.
Paul always looks
Oh,
good.
Mescal? Yeah.
Yeah, should have taken him in the.
He's
Promising.
dating J.J. Abrams' daughter now.
When you review when
Sure.
you revise that movie star draft again, I'm sure Paul.
That's who he's dating, Jay. Sure.
It's the word on the street.
Yeah. Well, what are you
It's
like?
really weird
Keeping
that
up?
J.J. Abrams' daughter is like a pop star now.
Who is she?
Oh, you don't know?
No.
Is, her first name, is she Maggie Abrams? Is that what her name is?
Really?
She's like a really big deal. Yeah.
Is she?
Gracie Abrams. It's Gracie Abrams.
Gracie Abrams. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a really big deal.
I think there
I think
needs to
she's
be.
pretty mediocre, but
Listen,
she's a really
guys.
big deal.
I'm not like Brendan. I'm not in a band or anything. I think at a certain point in your life, you just start not remembering or giving a shit about current music.
Music
And-
is the first thing to go, I think.
Yeah, and this has been my problem for like the last 5 years is that, like, you know, when like the Grammys have their best new artist, right? I used to be all over that shit. And now I'm like, I don't know who these people are. Like, I don't even, like, you know, these none of it's registering. And even Megan will play me a song, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. And she's like, it's the #1 song in the world. And I'm like,
I will check
good
in
for the
on-
world.
I
You know what
will
mean?
check in on music every now and then, just be like, what are we dealing with these days? And like trap music used to be so huge. That's kind of
so-
gone
yeah.
by the wayside a little bit.
Music tends to
country
follow.
has gotten really big now.
Yeah, country's big.
Country's changing because of the whole indie side of it, as opposed to the pop bro country side of it that's starting to
Yes,
fade away.
Eric Church is out.
Thank God.
Chris Stapleton is in. Thank
Stapleton.
God.
Hell yeah.
Sturgill Simpson, a lot of those that fit into that wheelhouse, I think, are wonderful artists. Jason Isbell, I think, is great. But yeah, there's a shift on the more indie circuit within country that I think is
And
taken
then,
over, which I think is
Morgan Wallen is king of the world.
Well done. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. No, I feel like it's like pop girl central. Like, you know, like we're in a pop girl era right now.
Olivia Rodrigo,
Billie
Chaperonin, Billie Eilish, Dua
And to be fair,
Lipa.
Billie Eilish
Dua
is one I
Lipa.
actually really like.
Yeah, I mean,
Her new
Sabri-
album, I think, is great.
Sabrina Carpenter's really big right now. She's got like the
Mhm.
#2, like 1 and 2 song in the country. I mean, there's obviously Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
dating Barry Keoghan.
She's dating Barry Keoghan. Yeah, and her #1 song is about that.
I love that Jay's all in the gossip.
He's-
with this.
What
He's
is
more
this
into
turned
the
into
gossip than he is
TMZ?
himself.
I have not heard the newer song. I've heard the Espresso song.
You haven't heard
the-
Please, Please, Please?
Mm-mm.
It's kind of got a country vibe to it, honestly, a little bit. Like it's pretty good. Yeah. Oh, and then obviously the #1 song in the world is Kendrick's, in my opinion.
Well, yes, that's very
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
It's the greatest song in the
You know
last
that
5
one,
years.
you know that one. You know the one country song. It's called like
Oh God! Sing
everybody
it.
in the bar. Everybody in the bar getting tipsy. That one.
Yeah, oh, yeah, like that one.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like
Yeah.
another shot of
I was
whiskey. Or
talking
whatever.
to my young coworkers, and I was like,
How young are we
"Do
talking?
you guys like mid-20s?"
And you're like, what?
No, I was like, "Do you guys know that this is a play on an early 2000s rap song, which is, of course, the song Tipsy by Jaquan?"
Yes.
And they were like, "I have absolutely no idea."
And they were like, "Get out of here, boomer! We're just trying to
Yeah,
enjoy our
exactly.
lunch." You know what I mean?
Because
Like,
I like that song because it's a play on Tipsy. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
yeah.
To be fair, I think
But-
we probably went through similar phases when we first heard,
Oh,
let's
sure.
say, a song like "Champion" by Kanye West, and had no idea that it was sampling a Steely Dan song.
Sure.
Like those things always happen.
Although I will
But it
say,
is fascinating.
even growing up, I think I was more into like 90s alternative than contemporary pop
Mhm.
when I was growing
Oh,
up.
I was
but
too. Yeah,
yeah.
but I was always a rock guy, so I was always gravitating
Right.
towards like Soundgarden and Pearl
REM
Jam.
for me.
Oh,
just thinking-
yeah,
I'm just now thinking about Kanye
Chili
sitting
Peppers,
around
love the
listening
Peppers.
to
the Peps.
Kanye sitting around listening to Steely Dan and just jamming that out on a nightly basis.
Oh, that does not surprise me. I mean, Steely Dan is kind of the unofficial R&B band in yacht rock.
Do you think if-
they're one of the most sampled bands in hip hop?
Do you think if we like went back in time in like a little machine or whatever, and that might be a spot I'd like to see Kanye just putting on the headphones listening to Steely Dan.
And just
one
Do
day.
you think
to Steely
Kanye
Dan.
hangs out with Caviezel?
Oh, Jesus Christ. politically speaking, or just
Yeah,
socially?
like they're hanging out. Do you think they watched the debate together last week?
I think I have no comment for that one.
What do you think they had for dinner that night? Oh my
Again, no
God,
comment. That's a
Yeah.
scary thought.
that is a terrifying thought.
Holy
Brendan,
cow.
you're fitting in right like a glove back in the old days here and talking to
Hey,
us.
we haven't
dum-dums.
lost our touch, guys.
No, we haven't. But we're here.
It's
We're here
almost
for.
like we've been here before.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's why I wanted to be here. We live the glory days.
The jokes are going to be endless tonight.
Yeah.
Brendan, we have some serious business to get to before we start talking about Deja Vu,
Right.
which is I got some questions for you
Okay.
about really why you picked Deja Vu. This was the one. This was the one you picked personally. Your relationship with Tony Scott, what you like about him, what you don't like about him, and I got to ask you. This is the question I've asked everybody. It's the second time, second to last time I'm going to ask this, Jay. But and it's the big question of the series, which is, if you could only pick one, Brendan Cassidy, are you picking the Riddler in Ridley Scott, or are you picking who we call the tone setter
the tone setter. I love that.
Tony Scott. You got to
I
pick
love the way
one.
you phrase that. I hear you. I hear you. I'm going to try and answer those questions in the order that you presented them, because I do think there is a way to sort of correlate those answers together within a narrative as to why I picked Deja Vu. And,
What a pro.
Well, I try to do this right. I try to do this right. I learn from the best. I learn from you guys. But I picked Deja Vu because I hadn't seen it probably since it first came out in 2006. I think it was. Maybe a few years after that is when I first saw it. And I always want to try to go back to movies that I know are getting some type of re-evaluation, whether it be for the best or for the worst. And I know for many people, Tony Scott, not just because of you guys, but Tony Scott in general is sort of being looked upon as, I think we took this guy for granted. I really think a lot of us took Tony Scott for granted because we may have seen him as just the other brother to Ridley Scott. And I think we're all starting to learn that lesson, that was maybe the wrong way to go about it. And that's kind of my relationship with Tony Scott in a lot of ways. I always felt like he was always there, but I never gave him the respect that I think he deserves, because he had an aesthetic, he had a vision that was wildly consistent. And the artistry there is something we need to recognize. And when I first saw Deja Vu back in 2006, when it first came out, my natural reaction at the time was, well, that stank. So I actually wanted to give it a rewatch. Like that, the reason why I wanted to pick this film is because I wanted to give it a new, fresh perspective, a new, fresh take on the way I view film nowadays as a critic. And I wanted to give it a fair shake and really look at Tony Scott's entire filmography now in a way that's not taking him for granted anymore. That does give him the respect that he deserves. So that's why I picked it. So in relation to your last question there, Ryan, Ridley or Tony? I mean, it really depends on the criteria. It really does depend.
This is just you. We're not putting up any sort of parameters or anything that it's just whatever Brendan Cassidy wants.
Gosh.
And I mean, the other one does go away forever. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. You can put that in your own head.
See,
for me, that's kind of how I do it.
It's like Desert Island.
Desert Island.
It's like,
are they gone forever?
Then I'm taking Scott free.
You're taking the production company.
Damn it! Actually, no one's ever done that.
You're gonna miss a lot of good flicks, though.
I know that. I was trying to find some realistic way to combine them.
You're getting the really bad movies still that Ridley
You're getting
makes.
the bad Ridleys.
Well, okay. Then let's talk about that, because the two criteria here, the criteria here, I feel like goes in one of two ways. Okay. If you want to talk about consistency, if you want to look at it as, okay, if both filmmakers were a college student, who has the better cumulative GPA? I think the answer is Tony Scott. Without a doubt, it's Tony Scott. It's not.
I don't think he's ever. I say he has never made a bad movie, in my opinion.
At worst, he has made very mediocre movies.
Yeah,
a movie
he's got one.
Yeah.
You could say Beverly Hills Cop 2.
The Fan.
Well, even so, I don't hate that movie, but
I like that movie.
I like it because of
it's the good Beverly Hills Cop.
It's not a Tony Scott movie.
No, I feel like Tony Scott was hired just for those sunset shots.
Yeah, 100%.
That's really that's all he was there for. But as an Eddie Murphy vehicle, I think it's
Eddie Murphy wouldn't play volleyball.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't abide by those rules. Yeah, Top Gun. He didn't guess.
They wanted him to wear shorts, but he wanted to wear shorts, but they were making him wear jeans.
Yeah, and because in order to play really good volleyball, you had to be in jeans.
I messed up the joke.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to help you out.
I think we slowly got it though. You're okay, Jake. But yeah, so Tony Scott just there's something to be said for that kind of consistency. There really is. But I think the best films from Tony Scott, as amazing as they are, it's not quite Alien. It's not quite Blade Runner. It's not quite even Thelma and Louise in many ways for me. Ridley Scott he has certain highs that are hard to replicate, and that's kind of what made him one of the premier filmmakers of his time. Like, we sort of see him as like a prophetic figure in a lot of ways because of that status and because of those classics. He has a lot of misses, though. He has a lot more bad films. I think I would still go with Ridley in this answer, primarily because this is something I always talk about. I love the idea of filmmakers who take ambitious swings and often even fail at those ambitious swings. Ridley Scott has a lot of bad movies, but I think a lot of those bad movies are at least somewhat interesting.
Sure.
They're interesting in their own bad ways, and I find that kind of fascinating. I don't like Prometheus, and yet I always keep trying to convince myself I like it for some reason.
That's true. That's people with Covenant.
I'm with you. I
Yeah.
can talk about Prometheus for 2 hours, but I don't really care for it.
I could talk about.
That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about House of Gucci all I want, even though if I sat down and watched that movie
The
again,
House of Gucci Defender has the
yeah, exactly. There you go. Ding,
But
he's here.
but they're at least they're intriguing when they don't work. And to be fair, a movie like Alien Covenant been able to come around on because of how that movie almost feels like the Matrix Resurrections before the Matrix Resurrections came out. There's like such a mean meta quality to it that I don't know if that was intentional. I think it had to have been intentional. That was Ridley Scott speaking to his disdain for the way that people have responded to the franchise over the years.
Yeah.
Especially
like
Prometheus.
Exactly. Yeah, that movie's a response to that, and I hate it, but I also love that I hate it. It's like, and even a movie like Napoleon, which I think is so well made, I can't disregard it, even though I think as a film it is not good. I'm really itching to see that 4-hour cut to see if there's a better movie within there. But as much as I don't love it, I find the badness of it kind of interesting. And I feel like I could say that a lot more about Ridley Scott than I can Tony Scott.
I guess
Tony Scott doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have.
Also,
bad
Ridley
movies.
Scott made the films Blade Runner and Alien, which is
And
something
Blade Runner-
that
Blade
he can
Runner-
really.
Yeah, Blade Runner is one of my all-time favorites. Alien is in my top 10 of all time. So that's enough of a criteria, I guess, to say that Ridley's my answer here. But yeah, I find such intrigue in fascinating failures from filmmakers. And I think Ridley has a lot of those.
Yeah. I mean, that's what now? Are we getting close
I think
to
it's
even?
like 7-4.
7-4? Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said most people were saying Tony when they got that question.
It's
right?
a Tony Scott
but the back
series.
half,
it's sort
though,
of a self-selecting.
It was a run of Tonys. We were doing
Voting
Tony.
Well,
Tony.
I'm not surprised.
then-
I'm not surprised because, like I said, there's something to be said about consistency. There really is. And Tony Scott has been wildly consistent throughout mostly his whole career. I mean, maybe you can say The Hunger is a weird outlier, but that was sort of predating the Tony Scott we know today. But 16 films in, admittedly, I haven't seen all of his films, but those I've seen, I'm kind of with Jay. I don't think any of them have really been terrible.
No. And I mean, like,
Tony Scott, one of the easiest filmographies to watch in history. It's so fun.
There's also like none of them are 3 hours long. None of them need like really a director's cut to fully, well, maybe except one to fully understand them. You have Revenge. I mean,
I will say Revenge. I did see that for the first time just a few days ago, maybe about a week ago. Now that we're recording this, that one I did not like, but admittedly, the one I saw is the one on Prime, which I understand is not
the 20
the preferred
minutes
version.
more.
Yeah, that is from what I understand, it's not the preferred version. So
I almost.
I need to see the director's cut for that, which I know is much leaner and much meaner. So my thoughts on that one at this point are probably more inconclusive than anything else. So I'm still willing to say he probably doesn't have a film I dislike.
That sex scene in the car was on Twitter the other day.
It's incredible.
Like
one of the great scenes.
They were like reevaluating and are like, oh, is Costner hot? And I'm like, because Horizon's out and everything, and I was just like, holy shit, they're just letting this go on the app. All right, cool. All right.
Yeah.
It's that scene when you see it for the first time is crazy.
It's nuts. Yeah.
It's so good.
Wild. It's wild.
But like,
either way, both brothers here, great filmmakers in their own ways.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, I am really excited for what we're gonna see coming up with Gladiator 2. But I gotta tell you, it's days like today. It's days like today where a movie like this, where I go, damn it, I really miss Tony Scott. Because I think the reason why, and ultimately, this is going to be the truth for this movie and for really the next one, but it's been the whole thing about the series, is, and Jay, you mentioned this perfectly a couple of weeks back, I think, a certain type of movie died when Tony Scott passed.
100%.
And that, and you can say the same thing's going to happen for Ridley. I don't think so, because I mean, there's
I think so, actually.
I think
who gets to make Napoleon?
I think Christopher Nolan does. I think Denis Villeneuve gets to make
Nolan,
movies like
sure.
that. Like
Nolan makes different kind of movies than.
But even so, like that.
No, but they are very. They're very. I know it's very select,
Ish.
but like, there's not a
Yeah.
lot of people making deja vus out there. Let's just say that. You know
No,
what I
they're
mean?
not,
There's-
and that's
you know,
that's another reason why I think we've taken Tony Scott for granted a little bit
Yeah.
over the years, and sadly we
Definitely.
had to realize that after he passed away, which is a little bit too late. But you look back at a lot of these movies, especially from the 2000s. That era, I think, is very fascinating. But I think they may have been wrongfully misconstrued as just, oh, this is another summer action film starring Denzel. But these movies were tonally doing more interesting things. I mean, there is an artfulness. And I know we're not talking about Man on Fire, but there's an artfulness to that movie that weirdly reminds me of movies like City of God, for instance.
That movie is
that,
avant-garde in its editing.
it really
Straight up.
is. Like that is so montagey, it should not work. And yet that is like every time I watch it, I tear up by the end. Like, that is an
Oh my God.
emotional
Look,
vibe of a
5-star
no.
masterpiece.
Yeah.
I'm
Incredible.
almost there. I gave that a rewatch in preparation for my rewatch of Deja Vu. I think I went 4.5 out of 5 for Man on Fire, but I was very tempted to go full 5 on that
You
one.
should tempt yourself and
Just
Well,
you
I
know.
think part of the reason why is that I was
Treat
looking
yourself,
back
it's
at
the
my.
summer.
I was. I know I wanted to. I was looking back at my top 10 of 2004, which I think is actually a very good year for film.
It's a good movie. Good movie year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would certainly have a place in my top 10, but there are other films I just like more than it that I kind of had. I feel like I need.
Do you
to
have like a
some star
Brendan? Do you have like a
separation.
rule there that movies in the top 10 have to be 5-star or?
No, it's just how I'm feeling.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, but I had some that I know I liked more than Man on Fire that I may have gone up to that full 5 stars that I felt like genuinely deserved it. Like a movie like The Incredibles, for instance.
Yeah.
There are just some films from that year. Like Before Sunset, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Hero, other movies like that. So that was just a stacked year. There was a lot of great competition that year.
Yeah, The Aviator.
I think I had that at like 20 something.
It's a good movie. I'm sorry, just had to.
I
say
like.
it.
I do like it. I do.
Still
like
haven't seen it.
Still haven't. That's right. You still haven't seen it. Oh,
Interesting.
Jay, I think-
Scorsese series next,
Jay.
boys.
Jay.
I've actually got some Scorsese blind spots,
That's a big. That's a.
which is silly.
It's one of my. It's one of my top 5 Scorsese movies.
I know
love
you like that one a lot more than I
love that
feel.
movie.
I don't even know if I want to say more than most, because the average consensus among Scorsese seems to be really diversifying as he
Yeah.
keeps making films.
No, I mean like mine. See, this is like the thing about like Scorsese is if you look at his filmography and like my top 5, you can't say that the man's made the same movie over and over again because it's like there are so many different genres or stories than just gangster films that I have in my top 5. So so from that
Wait,
alone,
I thought he only made gangster films.
see that's a common misconception by people that are not educated.
That means he's
Jay.
only made what, like 4 or 5 movies.
I
total,
love the
right?
gangster film, The Last Temptation of Christ.
I love the mob movie New York, New York. Kundun, you know what I mean? You remember you remember like the mob scene in Kundun? That's good times. Anyway,
Or the mob scene in Hugo.
well, you know,
There may be
Might have been a little bit,
hidden
you know.
mob
Oh,
subtext.
do you
in
remember that
one.
scene in Silence when Andrew Garfield was like, "You're gonna sleep with the fishes"? I love that part.
and then and that's what happened to Adam Driver in that movie.
Yeah.
God, it's a good movie. But we're here to talk about Deja Vu, which is penultimate film in our Tony Scott movie series. Obviously, it stars Denzel Washington, Paul Patton, Jay Sky, Jim Caviezel, Val Kilmer, Adam Goldberg, Bruce Greenwood. God, I miss Greenwood, by the way. Just going to put this out here again. These are actors that I love. I miss Greenwood. What a presence that guy had.
He just looks like an authority figure.
Yeah, he's just like that. Seems like a guy that's
like a
in
senator.
charge. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's got you got to get approval from him to do something. You know what I mean?
I feel like I have to listen every time he's speaking. I feel like I need to listen, and if I don't, I'm missing something important.
So the movie is after a ferry is bombed in New Orleans, an ATF agent joins a unique investigation using experimental surveillance technology to find the bomber, but soon finds himself becoming obsessed with one of the victims. Brendan, this is it's a really interesting movie. I was looking on Letterboxd, trusty old Letterboxd, and I was seeing a lot of people. They had high praise for this. This has been, I think, reevaluated over the last couple of years, especially when a little movie that came out a couple of years ago that Jay and I love called Tenent came out. And I saw someone, a lot of people actually say that this movie walked so Tenent could run. And of course, we all know Christopher Nolan's a big fan of the Scott brothers, particularly Ridley. But I got to ask you, did you see this one in theaters, Brendan? And what did you think of old Déjà Vu?
Well, I saw it in theaters when it first came out, and that's when I didn't really care for it. And I think part of the reason why was, when you're younger, and I was in high school at the time, you're more into the what of it all, as opposed to what surrounds the what. Yeah. And I'm still going to say this. I don't know if the science in Déjà Vu makes a lick of sense, even to this day. We could probably talk a little bit more about it.
I've got a whiteboard. We'll go through it.
I want to see diagrams. I want to see diagrams. But,
they do the thing. They do the folding paper with the pencil through it in this movie, which they've done in every time travel movie. Black hole movie ever.
It's totally an Interstellar. We've seen that same kind of
crazy. Jay is rolling up his sleeves right now, and there's the whiteboard, folks.
Yeah. And when I say the science doesn't make a lick of sense, I really mostly mean maybe the final act and what it's actually suggesting about time course correcting itself, and whether there's a convergence, or whether there's this whole arcing narrative within most time travel movies as, so and so has been there the whole time. I feel like there's almost two separate conversations happening there that I don't know if they necessarily converge all that together. But like the best Tony Scott films, I don't care about the what. I care about how they make me feel. He's a filmmaker that knows how to convey feeling in a way that I feel like no other filmmaker really could at this time, which is why I think we really took him for granted. His films just have such a vibe. I've always vibed with his films as I've rewatched them all. And while I don't think Déjà Vu is as strong as, let's say, something like Man on Fire from this same decade, I think it carries a lot of the same attributes that made that film so successful. It's mostly the Denzel Washington of it all. You're right, Ryan, that in many ways this film walks so that Tenent could walk in its own timeline.
Walk backwards, temporally.
Yeah,
temporally run.
Yeah.
We're making so many Tenent references here. We are not the first to do that. We cannot claim intelligence by making those comparisons. It's kind of a tired argument at this point, but it is incredibly.
Don't think, Brendan. Just feel.
You're stealing my thunder a little bit just there. It is incredibly uncanny how both films are as similar as they are, right down to the Washington front and center. I think they're very much opposites in some ways, because they both ironically claim the whole idea of don't think it, feel it. And that's actually uttered very literally in Tenet. But I think Déjà Vu is actually the one that's more successful at that notion. At least it is for me. Like this film just conveys a feeling of, I guess, lonesomeness is the best way I can put it, that doesn't require a script or dialogue to tell you those things. There's some type of sadness in Denzel Washington's presence here that fills in any of those necessary gaps that the film doesn't ever fall. It doesn't ever fall victim to being underwritten. I think in any other filmmaker's hands with any other star center, the film could have been severely underwritten. But I don't think that it is, because it's just that kind of vibe that really worked for me now. And so I was really glad I took the time to rewatch it in preparation for this episode, obviously, because at the time I didn't enjoy it. I was more concerned about, okay, that didn't make any sense. I don't like that. So now I have a different frame of mind to find why it's actually working so well. And I think it's a surprisingly powerful film for what it's getting into. It uses its conceit really interestingly.
J-Dog?
Yeah.
Déjà Vu.
Déjà Vu.
I'm actually really curious to hear what you think about this movie, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Should we do a little background first?
I think so. It's only fair. You're reading the books.
Yeah. I mean,
you might as well do it.
I love the history. I love the history lesson from you, Ledbetter.
So, I mean, the most interesting part of this movie for me is how the script was written. So, Terry Rossio, screenwriter, very successful. Little Monsters, Aladdin, Academy Award nominated for, hold on, let me see if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Shrek. So he was a tremendously successful screenwriter, more money than God at this point, but he was still trying to look to challenge himself. And you know what he got really involved in? AOL screenwriting message boards.
Oh my
And
gosh.
via one of these message boards, he wrote a gentleman by the name of Bill Massili, who worked at Merrill Lynch in New York. He was like a finance guy. And they just started talking about screenwriting, and Rossio really thought he had some good ideas, and went to Massili and was like, okay, I have this idea for like a time traveling murder mystery, but I haven't fully cracked it yet. And Massili kind of took it and ran. And then a little thing called September 11th happened, and Massili was like, I have lost any interest in writing a movie that begins with a terrorist attack. I need a break. And so he took a break, but eventually came back to it. And then Rossio wrote Pirates of the Caribbean. His life entirely changed. But also what that did was
Good for him
in the door with Jerry Bruckheimer. And so eventually Rossio was able to go back to Bruckheimer, this screenplay, which was written, it kind of equal credit between the two of them. But it was bought for a record price at the time, which is crazy for a movie like this, in my opinion. But you know, Bruckheimer was riding high. He was like, why not spend $5 million on a screenplay? What am I going to do? Let it, you know, you can't take it with you. So
is that your Jerry Bruckheimer impression, by the way?
Yeah, it's really good. If you haven't heard,
I feel like you've been practicing that one.
It's taken him all the way until this point to pull that out. Okay, cool. All right.
And I believe in an earlier episode, I erroneously said that Enemy of the State was the last time that Bruckheimer and Tony Scott worked together. Not true. Bruckheimer immediately reached out to Tony Scott to make this movie. And one of the more interesting elements of this movie is that this is the only sci-fi film Tony Scott ever made.
Yeah.
And Tony Scott pushed back against a lot of sci-fi elements.
Well, that's not true. Because revenge happened, because those sex scenes are out of this world. Anyway, continue.
That's a good point. But that's
continue.
like Star Wars, that's a space fantasy as opposed to science fiction.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Tony was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll take this on. Apparently he was pretty resistant to some of the sci-fi elements of it, and he started to kind of sort of turn it into a more traditional murder mystery story. And he insisted on taking the story from New York, where it was set in the script in New Orleans, which I think is a good decision. It gives this film a personality that maybe it wouldn't have had if it was set in New York. Yeah. Denzel claims that Tony Scott got fired at one point because he was so resistant to the sci-fi elements. The way that Rossio described the way that he interpreted the script was more like a Sixth Sense kind of prestige, twisty movie. And then Tony Scott turned it into a Tony Scott movie. And it just sort of transformed into truly, this is a Tony Scott movie through and through. Yeah. Despite the fact that it is within a genre that he only worked in one time. It to me really fits in with The Man on Fires and maybe to a slightly lesser extent Domino, things like that. But your Enemy of the State, there's a lot of surveillance state kind of stuff in this film. It's very much about that. It's taking that to its sci-fi extreme.
Yep.
And then Denzel was fully on board to work with him again. At this point, not only were they collaborators, but they were like true friends. So
they were deeply in the research process.
Yeah, totally. And then another little thing happened during location scouting. There was an event known as Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005, which was a huge event. Jim Caviezel actually was involved in like rescue and recovery during Hurricane Katrina.
I did not know that.
Which is crazy. Yeah, he went down and volunteered for that. So
yeah.
You know,
what are you going to say about that, Denzel?
He's got a certain track record at this point of some pretty out there ideals, but certainly you can pat him on the back for that. But he then the movie was put on hold, obviously. But Scott was like, "We're setting this in New Orleans. If it's not in New Orleans, I'm not doing it." And so they kept it in New Orleans, and this was the first film shot in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, which I think is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
And Tony knew a little bit, because this movie was so complicated, he couldn't have as overwhelming a style as he had in his last few films. He was like, This is complicated enough on a story level that I can't overwhelm the audience with the aesthetic that I've exercised in
Man, if he shot this like
especially
like Domino. I mean, if this movie was shot like Domino, Jay, this thing would fold in on itself.
It's still super stylish.
Oh yeah,
I think
it is. You know, in a way though, maybe I shouldn't have rewatched this so close to rewatching Man on Fire, because the stylistic choices that Man on Fire makes, I think, could have actually benefited a really high concept sci-fi film like this. But at the same time, I kind of, based on what you're saying there, Jay, I kind of like how Tony Scott almost utilized the sci-fi stuff as kind of a backseat for a more personal story. So the fact that he does weirdly seem a little bit more restrained, ironically, that weirdly gives this film even more personality. It almost works like it weirdly works against itself to make it even better. It's hard to explain, but I think that's also a fascinating thing about it.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it adds to kind of the tenderness of this movie, which I think is kind of the defining characteristic of this film. Yeah. You said loneliness as sort of the defining emotion of this film. I think you could, I mean, a similar sort of thing. Longing is kind of how I think of this film. We've brought up Tenent a lot, but this is Tony Scott's Vertigo. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And in fact, I rewatched Vertigo after I watched this because I was like, I haven't seen Vertigo in a while, and I've always been sort of like,
good movie.
You know what, not one of my Hitchcock's Vertigo. And then I watched it this time, and I was like, I'm such a dumbass. What am I talking about? This movie freaking rocks. But it really is this story that becomes about this unexpected obsession in the face of danger, and I think it plays with those ideas very well. Denzel, his adaptability is just second to none in his era. He is able to exude such a sense of inner strength while at the same time having the sensitivity to him in this story. And this film is entirely on his shoulders. He is in almost every scene of this movie. And without him, this thing, I don't know if it fully slips through your fingers or not, but it's not the movie that it is without Denzel. I think this is one of his best performances. I think it's one of his more complicated performances, actually. And it has what I at least anyway, have kind of learned from this series. It's just Tony Scott loved people. He loved people. He cared deeply about his characters. And in this film, maybe more than any. Claire in this film, the Paula Patton character, you could maybe prescribe the sort of, people talk about the dead wife problem in Christopher Nolan films. Maybe this has a little bit of that, although she ends up having a lot of agency at the end of the film. And you can talk about the plot in the last third of the film for sure and be like, this is overly complicated or perhaps nonsensical, but it is emotionally captivating, and I find the end of the film it's so emotional for me. I think it's so impactful.
It's
and so
very
effective.
satisfying at a human level.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what's so great about this film above all else. As great as the practical stunts are, the huge explosion at the beginning is crazy. They did this stuff for real. Tony Scott's so
the
awesome.
way it's edited is really the thing that surprised me the most on this rewatch, and it proves how good editing, you can get away with some of the most violent stuff in a PG-13 film if you edit it a certain way, because there are insert shots of people jumping ship as that explosion happens, and we briefly see them on fire, quite literally. And the way it's cut to create such a disorienting feel, I think just makes it seem that much more visceral, almost that much more gory without the actual physical gore to complement it. That's just proof of ways you can get around that and still sneak some really visceral content in a movie that would have been rated R otherwise. And it's violent in a very different way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an amazing film. If this was in a debate, they'd be like, hey, you've been 7 minutes over your time. What are you doing? So I will just finish by saying this movie's awesome. I love it. It's top tier Tony for me.
Oh, would you looky there? We're running out of show. No, I'm just kidding, Jay. I agree with both of you guys. I think this movie's great, and I forgot how great it is. And I was watching it. I was thinking about both of the films that you actually brought up, Jay. You stole my thunder there with the Vertigo stuff. I was thinking a lot about Tenent. I was thinking a lot about how Tony Scott is just, again, like you're saying, Jay, able to find emotionality within a story like this. This should just kind of be a super simple detective story, and then you throw in maybe some other, the sci-fi elements as well.
It should be silly.
It should be silly. It should be kind of convoluted. It should be.
It is a little convoluted.
Well, fair. I don't think it's nearly as convoluted as it could be. It could get lost as the movie's going on. No,
it's not Primer. Thank God it's not Primer.
No, thank God it's not.
My respect, but I don't think this movie calls for that type of dedication to plotting.
No, but I think it's
on that level of
it easily explains its rules without trying to outsmart itself. And I don't think that the movie does that at all. Because I think that they thematically ground this within Claire's story. And then, yes, I do think that the Hurricane Katrina component plays an entirely different meaning to this movie. Yeah. I mean, this is a movie not just about one person's survival. It's about a community's survival, a city's survival. Like, this place has been hit a lot, and it's not, there's no implication at all that that it is in a post Katrina world, but it is. And when you have that on there, it's like, how many more tragedies can this place go? And so you have that big idea of like him doing his job, trying to prevent the boat.
Yeah.
But then you simplified it all the way down for the audience to be like, there's also this girl who is collateral damage. And then you add in, I think that the other thing that makes it even more personal is in the avenging of Manuti, who Doug loses as well, his partner in all this.
Yeah.
And how you find out that through using these tools, there is collateral damage. There is things that you yourself can cause in order to then change the past and then essentially change the future. So I like all that. And I think Denzel is, he's incredible in this movie. There's just moments where, like, when he sees Claire on the screen and he realizes that he can communicate, like they can change the past essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He re-sees and looks at the monitor in a completely different lens of like, okay, I can't actually prevent this person's death. I can't actually prevent these events. And there's this then different sense of urgency. I think that, he goes full movie star in this moment, in this movie, at a moment where it's him and Caviezel sort of one-on-one in the interrogation scene. I think that's incredible. Him with Kilmer, like Val Kilmer and Goldberg's character are so government, going to explain everything kind of guys to you. The lay of the land, kind of don't like this outsider
Goldberg
coming
especially in. He's an explainer.
Yeah, he's big time explainer. So
he's
is
an exposition.
So is Eric Alexander to a certain extent. But I gotta say, the thing about Kilmer is that there's no like someone trying to backstab one another or some other convoluted plot within this team or whatnot. They fully brought Doug in to do exactly or get the type of reactions or the type of results that I think Tony Scott is asking the audience to buy into as well. Is that we need you to buy into that we're trying to save this girl, we're trying to save this boat, and we're trying to save the remaining soul of one of the major cities left in this country. And I think that that's so bold. I think that hits a little bit more in the title cards here than it does in Man on Fire. Where like he's like, thanks Mexico, we had a great time with you, we'll see you next time on the tour. And this one is just like, this is for you, this is for you to fight and to grow. So knowing that, I didn't really pick that up at the time, you know what I mean, because it's 2006 and I'm in like high school or whatever, and it's just like, I just want to see a good action movie with Denzel Washington. And I always thought that it was just kind of like one of those that, I was like, oh, okay. But the thing about it was I was watching it this go around. This movie moves. This movie is moving.
It feels like one continuous scene. Like,
yeah,
I feel like you can often say is like a really great edited movie if it feels like that.
For a 2-hour movie, I was like, wow, we're already here. where he's jumping in the past and everything, and which
Yeah.
I like the headgear chase.
That set piece is incredible.
That is incredible stuff in the rain.
It is, yeah. It is one of the most creative car chases I think I've seen for that decade.
Super
it
good,
is wonderful stuff.
Paul Cameron's cinematography, yes, it is more subdued than what we've seen in past Scott's work, but it is incredibly effective. And just the way in which, I think a lot of movies later on, especially in the 2010s, took this sort of the zoom in or the move around. I think like I was thinking about this movie and I was thinking about Minority Report. A lot of the sort of like see the full room and the scope of everything kind of and everything. Yeah. And I was thinking like, man, the Mission Impossible movies and the Bond movies and all these different spy movies, they took from these kind of premises as well here, I feel like, and that they seem super pulled from. But again, there is rules within this story that I like that then doesn't make it does make it then, once you figure out that, it is the past, this is a time machine, then it's just like, okay, well, then we have a responsibility to morally push this as far as we could. And yet when they're stopped by Bruce Greenwood, it comes down to, well, this guy, he's just one guy, let him do it, close up afterwards is what kind of Kilmer tells Goldberg. And then Denzel sitting there, and this should be super ridiculous that you're going to send this guy butt-ass naked back in 4 days in the past or whatever. And he's just like, maybe I've already done it before. You know what I mean? Maybe I've already done it before.
It's played off like a joke, but there's actually a deeper meaning to it as well. It's like a double meaning of the sorts.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a line for the trailer, right? But in this, it's like, at this point, it's like, well, maybe I've already done this before. And maybe I didn't prevent it, but I got a chance to do it now. And I think it's incredible stuff. I forgot how great this movie is. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's stellar stuff.
I forgot how great Denzel was in it, because we already made many comparisons to other movies already, and one of them being Vertigo, we talked quite a bit about already. And thank goodness Denzel's performance doesn't go the Jimmy Stewart route, where the obsession gets kind of creepy in an almost stalky, romantic kind of way. Because I don't know about you guys, but I never saw Denzel's attraction to Paula Patton as something that was romantic or even sexual. I never saw it in that way. In fact, I always saw her, Claire, as more of a thematic cipher for the people that someone just feels like they need to save in a post-Katrina world. So it actually helps weirdly complement the film's sense of place. And I don't know if that was the intent going in. Based on that backstory you laid out there, Jay, perhaps that was somewhat top of mind for Tony, that he did want this to be somewhat of an urban reflection. It made me think about yet another movie that did something rather similar, maybe in a more literal way. And I think these are very different movies, but I think they both utilize urban sense of place in similar ways. But Spike Lee's 25th Hour, I think, maybe utilizes New York City in a post 9/11 world in kind of a similar way.
Masterpiece of masterpieces.
I love that movie. That might be my favorite Spike Lee joint, if I'm being honest.
It's my widest opinion. It's my favorite Spike Lee movie.
I hate saying that, but at the same time, I think it's so good.
It's in my top 5, but it's no Malcolm X for me, at least.
It's also really good. Yeah. Great filmmaker right there as well.
Can't say that I like a lot by the name of Denzel
Washington in that movie.
Yeah, there you go. But even so, I feel like the way 25th Hour utilizes New York City in a post 9/11 world, Déjà Vu is kind of doing something similar with New Orleans here. The way he utilizes New Orleans as basically a character, I think, fills in a lot of those gaps in Denzel's character, because this is a man that you genuinely believe has this motivation to protect people. And that's not written there on the page. That's not told to us. That's not communicated to us. It's all about sensation. It's a sensibility. And this is something Tony Scott has been really good at in the past, and he continues to be really good at that here by conveying that through feeling, which is why I think this is such a great example of that don't think it, feel it mantra that a movie like Tenent promises. And I think this film does it really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that many scenes take place in just one room where
Yeah.
Denzel and others are just watching this screen, this kind of God's eye view of the world where you can look at anything, but only in real time, or past real time, I guess. But it still has this dynamic quality to it because Tony keeps the camera moving all the time. The editing is so propulsive, like we've talked about. And it has this sense of tension to it that you wouldn't expect from a movie that is largely people watching a screen. And that does come a lot from Denzel's, it's that willpower that you can just tell he has behind his eyes. And Brendan, I like that you called out that because I agree with you that there's not this sexual attraction to Claire in any way. It's sort of this, it's beyond that. And one thing that I do, and this is especially later in Tony Scott's career, he goes to this a lot, which is he will dip his toe into like divine intervention spiritualism where Denzel says, you don't know if this will work or not. It could be something beyond the science of this of this tool. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like some sort of spiritual force? And he's like, maybe. And I just like that Tony Scott is willing to even ponder that in an action murder mystery time travel movie. It's just that little stuff that separates him from other filmmakers. He has a thoughtfulness that I think is lacking in many directors who are making movies like this. Like Michael Bay will never be Tony Scott. Right, he just never will. I'm sorry.
I respect Michael Bay for different reasons.
I said Michael Scott.
Michael Scott. Wow. Oh, Steve Carell making a movie, that'd be fascinating.
Michael Bay he doesn't have that. He doesn't have the thoughtfulness, and nor do most action filmmakers, right? And Tony Scott is just like a cut above because he has this artfulness and tenderness and emotion behind everything that he does that I think is just wonderful.
It's another reason why I think we're taking the 2000s for granted. Not just Tony Scott, but the 2000s when it comes to action blockbuster cinema, I think was just operating at a different length. It's the same reason why so many people defend someone like Gore Verbinski.
Gore.
Gore still doing very different things than Tony Scott, but that was a man that knew how to utilize a budget and make a movie look huge and still look great today.
I mean, like he's working with Russo and Elliott on the Pirates movies. And those are giant movies, but they feel so visually different than what you get nowadays. They have a visual language.
He's a classicist in a lot of ways visually.
He is. He's coming back.
He is. I hear it.
What is his next movie?
Isn't it about AI?
Something sci-fi, I think.
I think the premise the premise itself seemed kind of tired, but I trust Gore to do something really visually interesting and artful with it, regardless of the story.
Yeah, say what you want about him. That guy can take anything and make it worth of a conversation. I mean, what was that movie he did? A Cure for Wellness, right? And that movie is
fascinating movie.
A gobbledygook script, but beautifully stunning.
Mouse Hunt, one of the scariest kids movies ever made.
True. That's like right up there with Bay Pig in the City. It's just like
a man from the future travels to the past and recruits the patrons of a Los Angeles diner he arrives in to help combat a rogue artificial intelligence, starring Sam Rockwell, Haley Lou Richardson, Michael Pena, Zazie Beetz, and Juno Temple. That's a
heck
crew
of a
right
cast.
there.
That is a heck of a cast.
I'll be there opening weekend regardless of what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, but there was such a tangibility to the action films from this decade, the 2000s specifically. Like it just they looked big. They looked like money was well spent in different ways.
Especially Tony.
That's the thing. Tony as well. These movies just had something to them that you don't see anymore. And I don't think this is nostalgia talking. I don't think this is us as modern moviegoers now who are comparing what used to be to the CGI sludge that exists nowadays. I think it's just a matter of us now realizing, you know what? The 2000s had a lot to artfully offer here. And thank God we're now really noticing that even more.
You think people who were raised on CGI stuff give a crap? Do you think they care? Do you think they watch a Tony Scott movie and see the fairy explode and they're like, whoa, that is different? Or are they just like, yeah, fairy exploded?
I don't know. I think we need to do a proper survey for that. I think that's a scary question. That's a scary question, and I don't even know if I want to know the answer to that, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I think that is a fair question to ask. It might just be what audiences are used to nowadays, that it's the way we responded to the 2000s. It's a similar way to that audience responding to the 2020s now. It's just what they're used to. It's what's fresh for them. It's what's new. So they look back at that as maybe the same way we look back on really terrible CGI in a 1960s movie or something like that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like along those same lines, is the Will Smith Guy Ritchie Aladdin the definitive version of Aladdin for a 10-year-old today?
Shit. God damn it, Jay. What are you
I'm
doing?
officially depressed. I'm officially getting my therapist on the line right now.
I don't think so.
Because the Disney movies have sustained. Like old Disney movies are still a really big.
No, I don't think that it would be, because I still think the animated movies will always dominate because they're shorter. They're cartoons. They're on Disney Plus. They're
canonized hard.
And also, I think the parent, if they were smart, if they're going to show their kid one, they're going to show them the one they grew up on. No.
Well,
yeah, but I don't care. It doesn't
you're the parent here. Which
no. I'm saying when I was.
No. This is a good question.
No, I will show. I will very. I don't know that I'll ever show Jet the Will Smith Aladdin.
No, okay, good. I'm glad you're putting that on the record.
I like Guy Ritchie, and that's actually one of the Disney live actions I like more than others.
Yeah.
Well, that one's at least attempting to have some type of personality than most of the others.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's a very good movie, but it's at least attempting something. So I give it some respect in that regard. But to your point, Ryan, I think a lot of these old Disney movies from the 90s, when I say old, I mean old by today's standards nowadays.
Old like us.
Yeah, exactly. Old like us. The Renaissance era. I think they're still engraved in the Disney culture that's what's first thought about, regardless of what age you come from. I mean, even when you go to Disney World nowadays and you see characters dressed up or you see artwork reflected, it's still from that era. Like no one's dressed up as a Will Smith genie walking around Disney World as much. You just don't see that as much. So I think the culture still suggests the canonization of those 90s films.
Yeah. I'm going to Disney in October. I'll report back.
Oh,
please do. If I'm wrong, if I'm wrong.
Did you have to put up a loan to do that?
Oh yeah. This podcast better hit big, or else I'm homeless.
Will I get some royalties for that one?
We're going to Disney World and a Disney cruise.
Jeez.
Dang, you're breaking the bank with that one.
So
you're going to have to do
this was not my choice for a vacation. My in-laws were insistent. I said he will be 2 years old. I think we should wait a couple years. Mm-hmm. They said, no, we're doing it. I said,
okay, have fun.
This is marriage.
This is compromise.
I'm just going to say you're going to end up doing this all over again in like 6-7 years.
I'm actually looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
I think that would be better. Yeah, because
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do in a theme park with a 2-year-old.
Don't go.
He's at least free to get in, so there's that.
I mean, there's that, but
but I feel like that's the added inconvenience of having a 2-year-old.
Yeah, he should be free to get in because
he should be. Yeah, because he can't do anything.
They should be paying you to take him in.
Yeah, now you're getting to something.
New
well, no, I mean, like you guys are gonna take turns being on the rides, or the grandparents are gonna be there, right? So like,
grandparents will be there.
So like, I mean,
no way we would do this by ourselves.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I think the cruise would be better.
No, the cruise will be easy.
Yeah, the cruise will be fun because you can go to
like camps and stuff that you can do and fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then the parents hit the bar.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Little mojito time.
I'm a fiend for him, man.
Yeah, I know you are.
Okay.
But no, I'm not a Disney adult either. There's like a lot of people.
No, I mean I wouldn't go to Disney World by myself, but I am genuinely.
Well, no one goes to Disney World by themselves.
Ryan, you better.
Do they really
research on that one, my man?
Well, I mean,
I'm sure there are.
Well, like perverts do, yeah, but like,
Ryan,
but not. But what?
Wow.
What?
Wow.
No, but I mean, I meant as a group of adults.
Oh, you're talking about like
by
single...
alone. I meant.
Oh, I thought you were talking about one person just by themselves.
I was
like...
not, and I, not the correct way to phrase it, but that was not what I mint.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like just one
But
person said.
there are definitely
like
people
if you
that go
just
by
were like
themselves too, for sure.
just like one person by themselves. That seems a little weird.
Single rider line. Those things are short. That's an
That's
efficient
true.
way to experience the park.
Yeah, but like the point of going to a theme park is to go with other people.
Now it's about riding the rides, man.
No, like it's about having like an experience. Like go with it. Go with a group. Go
No,
with
I know, it's
like
about
have
going with a
fun.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's a little weird if you go by yourself. Like you would never just pick up and say, you know what, I'm going to Six Flags by myself today. You know what I mean? It's just a little
Unless you have
weird.
to go for a job. Or like
I mean, like an
yeah.
job, yeah. But like if you just take all the all the things out, you're just sitting there and you're just like, you know what? I got my whole day to myself. I'm just gonna go to a theme park by myself.
Well, Ryan,
Nobody else.
you know, some people feel the exact same way about going to a movie by yourself.
Yeah, but I think that's a little different. Like a movie can be
That's
a singular.
You do it.
Well, yeah. Well, you do it as well. We all do it, but it's like a singular. Yeah, but that's like a singular event.
It's in
you
the dark.
Look, it's in the dark. You're by yourself. Like it's completely different.
A movie is in many ways not a social event whatsoever. In fact, when people are social, I get viscerally angry at them. So.
Oh, yeah. I had that experience in my Horizon screening. I had people like, you know, it was a very older crowd, and they just couldn't get, you know, to the point of actually shutting up and watching the movie.
And you pulled out your 6-shooter and you said, "It's big enough for the two of us."
Well, I was going to put up the order card. I was at a draft house, and my dad's just like, "It's all right. They're old. Just let them sit there." And I'm like,
I'm lucky. I haven't had nearly that many bad movie going experiences, but I also go at pretty odd times when I can really.
I like doing that too. Yeah.
Although I will say,
I love an 11 a.m. screening.
I love doing those. I love doing those so much.
Yeah. I like late too.
Late.
Yeah. I had a really bad experience once not too long ago where there was very little people in the theater. It was myself and maybe 4 other people, and those 4 were all teenagers and basically had a food fight the entire movie, running around the theater having a food fight. And guess what movie it was for? Hirokazu Koreeda's Monster.
Well, I mean, that is about kids, I guess. I mean, like I had a terrible experience many years ago when I saw notoriously made for kid movie Where the Wild Things Are, and and the grandma just let the kids run wild because like they thought that that's what you're supposed to do, you know, like art imitates life from the screen. And then when this movie got super introspective and depressing, she left with those kids because she's like, they're crying and can't stop crying.
That movie is so good. I need to rewatch that one.
It's such a good movie. And, you know, I recently watched Malkovich and an adaptation recently. I did it back to back.
Let's do it,
also
Ryan.
so good.
It's like 4 movies.
That's like a good month, right? You can't complain about that. I was a little lesser.
How would you?
Go
ahead, Ryan.
No. What were you going to ask?
I was just going to say, would you get mad if kids were doing that in Inside Out 2?
No, because it's Inside Out 2.
Yeah.
If I have to review
an expectation, if you're going like in the middle of the afternoon to Inside Out 2,
I try to go to the draft house where they are anti allowing that to happen. But they do have the rowdy screen. But they have the rowdy
little
screenings.
Thing about the draft house.
Here we go.
What's more intrusive than the people coming through with flashlights and food?
Well, they don't come with flashlights. Like the lights are below the tables, and that's how they find you. But
that's why I've hated going to movie taverns for so long. Thankfully, I think they changed their model. But beforehand, they used to bring your food out and then bring you a check mid-movie. And I forget.
Oh, they've gotten rid of that, Brendan, at draft houses. They do the swipe the card ahead of time, and it's great because then they only bring the food.
They bring it to you during the trailers or something.
Yeah,
but
a lot of food comes during the trailer.
I have a movie tavern, and they will do it. You can basically schedule when they bring your food.
Yeah. You order everything at the bar up front and tell them where your seat is, so that way they know to bring it to you.
Yeah.
I've never had good food at a movie tavern. Just to be
it's bad.
I would never. We were stupid recently, and we did food at the draft house, and it was like $80, and it was ridiculous. So
yeah, that's
like,
exactly it. It's overpriced.
Yeah, it's overpriced.
You're paying for the novelty of it.
You're paying for the convenience. That's what you're paying for, because you're like, I'm seeing a 6 o'clock movie. No other place will be open. You know, if it's like, I don't know, if you're seeing like Furiosa or something, it's like a 3-hour experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well then my only option is fast food at that point, and I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So I'll have a flatbread and a salad, and it's $900,000, and basically I'm going on a Disney cruise at that point. Anyway, we're talking about Déjà Vu.
Can I say something that might be controversial?
Yeah.
I think Jim Caviezel is a good actor.
I don't think you're wrong. When did he
I
start?
think-
When did he start becoming America's psychopath? And
Was it during COVID? Maybe
it has to be. Yeah, that's when he really started getting into the what is it, like the alt-right Sound of Freedom kind of stuff. Because he was
Infidel. I'm looking at his filmography right. Paul, Apostle of Christ.
Well, like that's the thing
he
about
played
him.
Jesus.
He was Jesus Christ. And Jay, honestly, I'm going to say this. You brought it back to like for a generation, Aladdin, like which, like I know this could sound weird. For a generation, that new Aladdin movie, the 2019 one, that might be what an audience thinks of when they think of Aladdin. For a long time, because Passion of the Christ was such a giant hit in 2004 for so many people, he got off with the fact that like he was known for playing Jesus Christ, which is
Ryan,
huge.
he's the star of one of the greatest films ever made.
Thin Red Line.
The Thin Red Line.
Okay, I was like,
Even though he wasn't supposed
I thought
to
you
be
were
the star.
reclaiming.
Right.
I thought you were reclaiming
That film was
Passion of the Christ.
reformatted to make him the star. Unfortunate to Adrian Brody.
Sound of Freedom.
That made it
One of the great films of all time.
if you
Sound of
believe
Freedom
that.
made like Monopoly money.
Yeah.
Going
that
back
was-
even like way earlier than Deja Vu.
God, do you know how much money Sound of Freedom made?
$400 million.
Too much money.
No,
Too
not
much
that
money,
much.
right?
300.
250.
Yeah, but like how much of that is bought for by and paid for?
Well,
by
I don't know,
the
but either
Republican
way, it
National
goes to their
Convention.
pockets. I mean, that was a
Yeah,
good campaign
I know,
by them.
it was a good tax write-off. I'll tell you that. No, I mean like
targeted the right people.
he's been mostly on CBS like the last decade for the most part because he's done that Person of Interest show with Jonathan Nolan.
Oh,
which is,
yeah.
Which is all about
Jonathan. Is that a Jonathan Nolan show?
Yeah.
I think it's a production, or at least he's an executive producer.
He's like an
or
executive
something like
producer. He
Created
directed
by
it.
Jonathan
Yeah.
Nolan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. And J.J.
Y'all-
Abrams
y'all-
did stuff on that, or like produced it too.
that. Y'all ever see the movie that Jim Caviezel's in called Frequency from the year 2000?
Him and Dennis Quaid? Yeah, it's a good movie.
That's a
a duo
movie.
right there.
Yeah.
Killer
You mean
concept,
Jesus
killer
and
movie.
Reagan?
Jesus and Reagan. Talking via ham
Dennis
radio.
Quaid is a guy that I like in a movie. I like Dennis
I
Quaid in
know.
a movie.
I wish he was
I
in
hear-
more stuff. I heard he's really
I hear-
good in
I
The
hear-
Substance.
I was just gonna say, I heard he's really good in The Substance. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Substance just sounds like a wild ride. But yeah, no, Caviezel's great in this because he's playing himself, it seems like now in real life. He's scary in this movie. And he's got
Yes.
those piercing
There's
eyes.
something weirdly predictive about him in this movie.
With that shot when Scott has the car flip and Denzel's facing him and he's looking at him with the goggles in the truck and he's looking at him in the past and they're just staring at each other.
Yeah.
Bone chilling stuff. I was like, damn, this is super effective. And yeah, I mean, like his sort of explanation to Denzel is, it doesn't hit quite as home on the dialogue standpoint as much as I think the delivery is done with such confidence by Caviezel there. Like,
Well, it's barely an explanation, which I
Yeah.
actually appreciate about it.
He
Yeah.
modeled his performance on Timothy McVeigh,
there you go.
Oklahoma City bomber,
Yeah. But I mean,
who
he's,
was very much this like, I'm trying to save the country
yeah.
Mhm.
thing.
But he's good in this movie. I mean, like there's a lot of great performances here. I mean, I want to go back to, I think Paula Patton's, this is like her first big thing. This is like her breakthrough.
Her career, not
Should
super
be-
stellar.
She should be in more things because she's good. Like she
She's
was supposed
generally good.
she was supposed to be like
Mission Impossible.
she was supposed to take like the next step after that, and she just never did. And
I
then
would
what's
Renner.
I'd like to see her come back to Mission Impossible. I really liked her in Ghost Protocol.
Mhm.
I would too, but like it seems like they found Rebecca Ferguson and then they kind of
Ghost Protocol was sort of supposed to be like the handoff movie, and
it was supposed to be like her and Renner
going.
going forward, and
Yeah,
And Tom Cruise said, "To hell with that.
I'm not done running."
Yeah, no, I've got a lot of run, and then he
got
broke his
ankles
leg.
to break.
Yeah, exactly. I got kneecaps to shatter. Well, Renner's talked about I guess that he wants to go back, right? Anybody can go back in that series, really, when you think about it.
At this point now, everything's up for grabs.
But she's got the whole time.
But in the third act, it's her acting opposite one of the greatest actors of all time, and she's going toe for toe for him the entire time. She's killing it.
Well,
and
here in Deja Vu, it's like we talked about before. There's never really a romantic connection between Denzel and Paula Patton here, and there's not supposed to be. We're supposed to see Paula Patton and the character of Claire as this cipher for
it's almost
someone
more paternal.
In a way, it kind of is, yeah. But part of why that works is because of Denzel, like we talked about. But that's also Paula Patton and not overselling the good-looking nature of both of these people, right? The sexiness of these people, which could have easily been misconstrued as romantic if not done with the right level of grace. And I think they both handle it really well. So the fact that she's got to go toe-to-toe with Denzel, but also limit herself in such a similar way, I think is where the movie ultimately works so well, why their dynamic is so good. And it's why the final act is as cathartic as it is. Even if I don't know if the science really makes any sense, I still end up having a lot of plot related questions as the end credits roll, but I kind of don't care because I still, from a character dynamic, I still have the sensation that I think the movie is trying to give us. I still feel ultimately moved by what happens. And I think it's because of both of them. I think they're great.
I think the biggest compliment you can pay a movie like this is that the logic of it is kind of an afterthought.
Right. It is.
And I think that is the case with this film. Whereas, a movie that I like but have never fully latched onto because it makes the logic of it so central until it kind of tries to just hand wave it away, but it still is so important. Looper is a movie that I'm like, you are making the logic of this movie so central to everything. And then they do have a scene where they're like, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think, it's by that point, it might be a little bit too late. You've kind of mattered too much. I like Looper, but I think you're right. That's probably its biggest problem.
Yeah. And that one is the paradox in that film is one that I harp on anytime somebody brings it up. I just cannot make heads or tails of it. And I think they try to make such a big deal about it making sense that, and maybe it does, and I don't have all the facts behind it, but that's how I feel about that movie.
I haven't seen that movie in forever.
Yeah. But you
also some of the most unnecessary makeup. Why did they have to make Joseph Gordon-Levitt have his nose?
It's bad. But with Deja,
well, he has the hair missing too. Sorry, Brendan, but he has the hair missing too, and he unnecessary. He debalds
just
it's a little too much.
Doesn't matter.
But that's what makes Deja Vu so different than something like, say, Looper. Because if Looper concludes to suggest that maybe the logic was kind of an afterthought, it spent so much of the movie thinking the exact opposite. Whereas I feel like Deja Vu is pretty consistent in keeping the logic a little bit more close to the chest, but not playing its cards too heavily. So by the time that the third act rolls around, it isn't really as interested in explaining itself in that way. It does just enough to leave you with those questions to find yourself fascinated by it until you think to yourself, wait, none of this really matters. The movie just moved me, and that's all I care about.
Yeah.
And it certainly gets to have its cake and eat it too in that regard.
I love the needle drop of Don't Worry Baby.
Same. Yeah, same.
I think that's great, and I love the final shot of this movie where Denzel he they don't ever throughout this entire goddamn movie really hint at ooh, this is gonna be some deja vu shit. You know what I mean?
Sells that,
and he just kind of sits there and goes,
incredible.
Yeah, and it's just nah, and then they're just smiling, and he drives away, and the music turns up, and you're like, God damn it! This movie go on for another hour, please?
It's the cheesiest moment of the movie, and it's the one that needs to be as cheesy as it is.
Yeah. And you know what else I love are kind of the puzzly elements where you do see Denzel doing the "you can save her" on the refrigerator, and you see them setting up the voicemail that Denzel leaves on that he hears earlier in the film.
Yeah, the way it plays with those breadcrumbs is really clever.
It's very clever.
Even though it does a really good job putting the audience many steps ahead of Denzel Washington, to the point that you think, wait, how are you not picking up on this just yet? Like, the clues are already there. You would think that maybe his character would have noticed that a little bit earlier than he actually does. But that's where I think the film is kind of fascinating in its confusion, because I always find myself thinking, is this a narrative that's kind of Back to the Future like, that's suggesting, okay, Marty McFly was always there the whole time, and this is like this is kind of a loop in some ways? Or is this just like two separate timelines trying to find their way to converge once again, and they're finding little tricks to bring it back together? Yeah, like they're
it's the Erica Alexander kind of explanation.
It's like trying to reverse engineer itself until something happens at the end, some crucial moment that allows it to finally deviate into its own thing. And then I'm left thinking, okay, what was that thing that finally made that happen? Is it Claire finally choosing to intervene like she does? Is this movie ultimately about, the innocent person, and their autonomy and acting out in something like this, like taking control over the situation? But that's what I think makes Claire such a fascinating character. She's really the one that created this new temporal pincer movement that deviated into something else. Like, maybe she's the arc in all of this.
Well,
she's a question.
She's honestly, I'm sorry, Jade, not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But she is, she's kind of the totem.
Yeah.
Not to use an Inception term, but she's the totem at the she's the piece that has to fall right into place in order for.
I'm going to say something that's going to make people mad. This movie is so much better than Inception.
No. I wasn't trying to go down that path, Jay, but
I like them both a lot. I think I'd probably put them both in the same place.
Last time I watched Inception, I just thought I got on Jay's wavelength with. I was like, talk. And
that's then, the one time the Nolan exposition doesn't bother me.
But I know I'm not going to get any defensive from you guys.
Early Nolan is not my favorite.
Well, that's not early. That's like mid Nolan.
Memento's still my favorite. Memento's my favorite movie.
Memento is almost like a different thing. It's like pre-Nolan.
Yeah. It's Nolan, but before he knew he was Nolan.
And I do love The Prestige.
I do love The Prestige.
Prestige is really good.
And I know you guys don't like it, but I really do love Interstellar. And I think that
a lot of people do.
I want to love it so much more. It's a film I keep trying to
Agreed.
love.
Yeah, that's another one, right, Brendan, where you just keep putting it on, trying.
That kind of goes back to my Ridley Scott talk. It's a movie I think that trips over its ambitions a lot, but it's kind of a fascinating failure for me. Like, that movie, it kind of makes me angry, but like, there are things about it that move me, but I don't know if they move me for the right reasons. I love everything it's trying to go for. I just think it fails in getting there, but it does so in a fascinating way that I just can't forget it. I would prefer to have an experience like that as opposed to something I don't like that I forget 2 days later.
I gotta tell you, this got me in the gut when she's sitting there with the blanket after the aftermath, everybody saved, and Denzel, the second Denzel, I guess, or the Denzel for the new timeline,
questioning her.
He just comes back. He just walks back into the crime scene,
really good.
And he's doing like it's just regular, like, okay, this is me starting the whole thing. All right, and everything, and he's got his, and he's just like, Doug Carlin, how's it going? And she's like she's seen a ghost. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I was so in there.
I find very
well.
powerful.
It's like what Brendan said. It's not romantic. It's that it feels like It's only romantic in this sense, Brendan.
It's spiritual in a certain way. I think
it's only romantic in this sense. Is that it is clear that he lost his wife. Carlin lost his wife. And that this is his chance to save potentially maybe somebody that reminds him of her, or potentially it also feels like a father-daughter relationship as well, of the child that he never got to have.
We don't know any of those things, but a great performance and a great movie allows you the opportunity to infer those things about character.
Wait, is that a thing? Are you confusing this with Unstoppable?
No.
The dead wife thing?
No, he talks about it like at the beginning of the film. Like he talks about like with her father, right? With the photographs. She's like, you have anybody in your life, Agent Carlin? And he goes, not anymore, essentially.
Oh,
yeah.
But there's
no talking about
where he's going to shut himself off. I don't know.
There's no little explanation as to who or what that is.
Yeah.
It allows us.
But it's a lost opportunity. It's a lost chance of either an escape from this, or if it's left open, Jay. but I think that
Yeah,
it's
for
a
sure.
lost. But Claire is a representative, I think, of like that lost possibility.
I always took that as like a kind of like Al Pacino in Heat, where he's like, my job gets in the way of me being able to connect with anyone. And then
You mean
his connection with Claire is sort of this first time that he's ever kind of felt this way. And that's why he has this drive to do it. It is sort of otherworldly attraction, non-romantic.
Yeah, but Pacino also does have a wife, and he has a stepdaughter, and it's like the only one he cares about is actually the stepdaughter by the end of the film.
The scene in Heat where Al Pacino is at the hospital, and he's just like,
get a doctor.
We're not gonna last. Like, no, just so you know.
Yeah, it's so good. Just the realization of that I've got to catch this guy, and that right now is more important.
Anyway, Heat, good movie. Deja Vu, good movie. Question.
Yeah.
Here's my question. So they're going to find Denzel Prime's body at the bottom of the bay, correct?
Maybe not.
I would assume.
Did it blow up enough that it's fully disintegrated?
That is the only thing I can think of where maybe it's unrecognizable.
Maybe the chum gets it? Is there chum in the water? Like fishes?
Are you saying a shark will come by?
I don't know. I don't know. Is enough of him
Those
blown?
famous New Orleans sharks?
Is it enough of him to be blown up for him to be?
I don't know.
Fish food?
Maybe they're implying that his body is blown to smithereens. That's possible. But still, I think you could probably get the dental records.
Oh my God, you in the dental records, and you're like,
so
does he now
fingernails and shit?
Does he cease to exist now that the timelines have split into its own thing?
Well, the real question becomes, and I guess this is,
I do think the moment
Jay's
where
opening
he
this
dies
door
is so. That is such an affecting moment for me too.
Yeah,
because
it's very rare we see Denzel.
It kind of had to happen that way,
yeah.
And he knew that going in.
It's very rare we see Denzel die in movies.
That's true.
And so when he does
die,
that's a very
meta movie star. Like, whoa.
Well, he's done it twice in Tony Scott movies. Doesn't really do it a lot. In others.
True. True.
And even like
Man on Fire, that's another level.
I mean, that's another level. But but even his character dies in the movie that he directs.
Remember how
like
good Man on Fire is?
Yeah, we talked about it like 2 weeks ago.
So
but like no,
amazing.
I mean like
Amazing.
Even he dies in a movie like Fences, but it's off camera, so we don't see that.
Yeah,
that's there's time and a lot of factors there. But
what if Tony Scott directed Fences?
Well, then Denzel wouldn't have directed it.
No, that would have been weird. That would have been a little while. My first choice, Tony Scott for Fences.
No, probably not. It's probably not the guy I would have thought for that one.
Fences in the style of Domino.
I'm telling you though, those Equalizer movies, if they're not Antoine Fuqua, if they are Tony Scott, I think that
they're like great.
I think they would be like, we would be talking about, wow, this is John Wick level great, because Scott's ability to work with really great screenwriters helps, I think, elevate his movies over the other action schlock that Denzel does. Like, Denzel elevates all that other stuff because of himself. But I do think that there is a Tony Scott's ability to be able to say, I am such a great visualist, but also I know what a good script looks like, and be able to work with collaborators. I mean, we've talked about it.
Tweak stuff.
Yeah, and he can move stuff around or bring in guys.
He's just I'm sorry, better director than Antoine Fuqua. It just is what it is.
Well, that's kind of that's a little controversial. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's true. It's not that Antoine Fuqua is bad. It's just like
he's just kind of a guy.
He's pretty
plug
anonymous. He's
more journeyman.
He's pretty harmless. He's pretty harmless. You know what I mean? When I'm watching one of his movies, I'm like, a studio made this, right? Like,
I am not expecting to be challenged in any way.
No, not really at all.
Especially when his version of Magnificent Seven literally ends with a line that says, "And they were magnificent." You know, it's not going to challenge you.
I guess Denzel does die in that one too.
Yeah, Denzel dies in that one, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's just a movie that no one remembers.
Oh no, he doesn't die at the end of that one.
Does he not? I don't remember.
No, he writes off.
The fact that we don't remember, I think, is telling.
He writes off. He's one of the 3 left that writes off at the end of that. It's not a bad movie. It's just like it's not the Magnificent Seven.
I think that's the worst thing you could say about it.
Yeah,
the worst thing you could say about a movie like that is that it's just there.
Yeah, it's like taking Pelham 1, 2, 3. It's like it's just there. Denzel, don't remake movies.
You will never forget John Travolta in that one. I'm kind
of that's true.
John Travolta's doing things. He's doing things I've never seen before.
For better and for worse, I guess.
And I love that it's all the above.
Do you guys have anything else you guys want to say about Deja Vu?
Elle Fanning's in this, which I think is neat.
She is?
She plays one of the little kids on the boat. Also,
on the boat?
if you were in the
Okay.
Navy, would you want to have a party on a boat?
You're like, I want to be on land. I'd have to ask.
Tired of being at sea. Well, it
Sick of
depends.
this.
I guess it depends on the budget, right? Like, I guess. Isn't it like it's on like a ferry, right? Like
Yeah, it's a ferry.
yeah. So
Yeah,
like,
but
why
They're going
families
somewhere.
they're going somewhere? Wouldn't you just like? Can't you plan like a pub or something like down the
You
road?
guys,
or, like,
you
an
guys been
event
to New
center?
Orleans?
Yeah.
I've not. No.
Ryan, you been to New Orleans?
Yeah, one time.
Not my favorite. I'm gonna be honest.
It's
I've
It's
been
not-
like five. I've been like 5 times. It was where everybody would go when I was in college.
it's not
And
getting any
I think
better.
I think I'm good.
Is it
I'll say
like
that about New
certain cities have that effect, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, people feel that way about Vegas too. It's a similar
Vegas is-
party. It's just a party city.
I haven't been to Vegas
I've been
in a
to
long
I've
time.
been to bachelor parties there. I've been to like college parties there.
Brendan, do you have a city that's like that for you? Like, did you been? You're like, I'm tapped out of my experience here.
Nashville.
Nashville,
I've only been to
interesting.
Nashville once, weirdly.
I've never
And
been.
I say that I say this
Relatively
as someone
close.
that is a musician, but I think
Yeah, I was gonna
we're at-
say there's a great
we're-
country artist on every corner in Nashville.
Well, it's also the biggest corporate music scene nowadays. That it's
Yeah.
almost
Yeah, it's transformed a
it's
little
at
bit.
it's at a point now where if you really want to try and make it in the music scene, you're probably better off trying to develop your own local following in your own community and let social media guide you.
I was going to
It's
say
time
social
to
media is
change.
like the thing now, right? Where it's just like
yeah.
the TikToks and
Social media is the new Grand Ole Opry.
oh, for
I
God's
mean,
sake.
geez,
X is the new Broadway.
you go to publications that are reviewing music these days. You go to like pitchfork.com. They're trying to find a lot of groups that aren't even signed. Like that's just what they go for. The whole idea of signing to a label is just not what it used to be.
No. No, it's also like the record deal's not actually the thing that
You got to own your masters. Come
Well,
on
it's
now.
it's not even just owning your masters, but when you get paid by a record company to sign a deal with them, you're really just taking out a loan. That's basically what it is. And the way you actually get payback is based on how well it performs and who owns what. There's a lot of moving parts to it that basically could be its own economic lesson. That we don't
My
need to get into here.
understanding, and Brendan, you would know this much better than I would, is that really the only way to make money as a musician is touring.
yeah,
That's one of the big ways, but that's something you have to be willing to make sacrifices for because that takes a lot out of you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it also depends on the kind of touring you're doing. I know a lot of local musicians in the Philadelphia area that are trying to do their own thing and they're putting on their own tours. They're kind of managing themselves, but maybe they're just going and playing a few small local venues along the entire East Coast.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on what they're looking for. In some cases, there might be some individuals that actually have their own full-time jobs and they're just trying to get paid in exposure because getting paid in exposure through live touring is a great way to get that exposure. And that's a great trade-off to at least start to build to something new. But yeah, if you end up getting that following, then yeah, touring does help because there's also merch sales. There's also other factors that come into play there. So yeah, the touring definitely does help.
Does the touring, I guess, for like national artists, does that get? I mean, once you get bigger and bigger, doesn't it also probably gets murkier with like Ticketmaster and stuff like that too, right?
It gets murky, especially when record labels are involved, and also how the agents handle all of those things, whether it's all in house or through like a PR team that actually manages them. It's surprising how much of a business that it is. It's not even surprising. It's just there are way more moving parts than I think many of us are willing to admit.
Yeah, for sure. But no, to answer your question, Jay, New Orleans is, I think I went once. If I go again, it would be probably like my last time I ever go. Vegas.
What's the opposite to that question? Like, what are some cities that you can always go to and just enjoy yourself?
Well, I can always go to New York and have a good time there. There's so much to do. I think that's
so big. That's the thing.
So
you can always
big.
find somewhere new to go.
I mean, when I go to the state of Colorado, I feel like I can. That's like always a good spot.
I don't like Denver.
I'm more of a Colorado like Springs.
I would just.
Okay.
I would go to ski.
Yeah,
I love
somewhere.
Aspen. I love Aspen. I love
Aspen's
Vail.
like I'm not like like Denver, yeah, but like the surrounding areas, yeah, for sure, they're great stuff.
I'm a North Carolina guy. That's probably my favorite state to go to now.
Nice.
I've spent, yeah. I mean, I went to college. I went to grad school in North Carolina, so I spent a lot of time. Asheville is a city I love.
Asheville's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Asheville's a lot of fun. Very artsy. It has its own. It's not too big, but it has a real personality.
It's a great size. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can get a little. There's probably 5 too many crystal shops in Asheville.
Do not say that to my wife. That is her jam.
Okay.
Wait, like the crystals?
All right, let me rephrase. They could probably use like 5 more crystal shops.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay.
But
All right.
Good music scene in Nashville, though.
great music scene. There's a brewery every 15 steps.
Mm-hmm. Wicked Weed, one of my favorite ones.
Great restaurants. Yeah, it's a kind of old school. You can go to the Biltmore if you want. It's a pretty fun thing to do.
Yep. Hannibal, baby.
Good stuff.
All right, guys. Any last things? Anything else you want to mention before we talk about travel plans? I guess. Kind of the
Deja
whole
Vu
range.
rules. Deja Vu rules. This movie's great.
I love that the program's called Snow White. I just love when
that's cute.
That's just cute. It's good.
Barely talked about Kilmer, who I think is good.
I think Kilmer's great.
This was a very fallow period for Kilmer.
This is one of the last. This is one of his last performances before his condition took over. It's.
I will. Yeah, I agree. Sadly, I will say the one thing we haven't talked about here with Deja Vu, the introduction of Snow White before it's confirmed that it is this wormhole of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It's communicated as basically 4 different satellites rendering images, and my first thought was, man, AI is not too far from this, is it?
No.
It actually, for a second, I thought, is this movie really this predictive? And then it becomes something else entirely. But there's a brief moment that really kind of like made the hair in the back of my neck stand up. And I think that just goes to show how ahead of its time Tony Scott was in certain aspects without him even realizing it.
It's just making me
I also kind of like when it dips into lowbrow territory, like when they're watching her in the shower and stuff. And it's
and then Denzel looks at
a little. What's more perverse than?
It's kind of distasteful, and I kind of respect that it's here.
Agreed, exactly.
But I love Denzel just like looking at him because it's like Claire's sort of like a daughter figure to him at this point. And he's just like, "You had enough? You good?
Well, y'all chill out."
You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like we're not. I mean, yeah, you could totally abuse the system and everything that way too. But yeah, the sort of 360 scope, zoom in, zoom out. Use of it, like I feel like
I still don't really understand how it gets indoors, but
I don't know either. But also like a movie like this with this kind of technology also could be extremely nauseating to watch. I think it could be a headache, and I think this movie is so it's so fluid in the way it's showing this very complex system. That I have to, and I
feels like it was shot with a drone almost.
Yeah, it feels like to Brendan's point, it feels like technology that we have today. Unfortunately, I don't want around, but
I know
no, it is. I mean, this is like peak surveillance state, Patriot Act.
Yeah, it feels feels very like much Tony Scott also being like, I've seen a Bourne movie, let me make mine as well at the same time too, because Greengrass had made Supremacy at that point, and feels like those movies, I'm not saying that they're all connected, but I'm saying like those movies are very much about
there was a movement of
there is a movement of those movies where it's like they
could argue Enemy of the State kind of started.
Yes.
But,
fair point
very much so, Jay. But yeah,
I just want to reiterate the set piece in the car with the goggles is, in my opinion, truly one of the great set pieces of this century.
It is so.
It's one of the great set pieces
creative
in this entire filmography. I mean, his filmography is filled with great set pieces.
In a way, it made me even more okay with the lack of aesthetic flashiness that this film, I guess, doesn't have when compared to something like Man on Fire, because it's all compensated from that one set piece. That set piece gives you everything you need. It's like, okay, I'm good. I have what I need. That was thrilling as hell.
And it's conveyed as confusing as hell because you're in Doug's mindset there as well of like, this is the first time I've ever used this. And
it's one of the most creative split cam shots I think I've ever seen.
It's super good. Like it's to your point earlier, Brendan, this is a movie that would age better with time and be more appreciated now because we're able to step back and be like, oh, he's doing things that I don't know, many other directors are kind of going for this as well. But if they are, they're definitely not going for as realized and as focused as Scott is with this picture. And so, yeah, I mean, like the last act of this movie, just the chase to the ferry and everything that goes on there, it's great. But yeah, that set piece it's phenomenal stuff. And
Tony Scott was doing so
movie.
many creative things.
He was
in this era. I know we're not talking about Man
Tony,
on Fire,
man.
but I know we're not talking about Man on Fire here. But that I'll just say that movie has probably the most creative timer countdown I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, it's great. And I'll say one little funny anecdote. Brendan just reminded me of when he was talking about the split shot with the goggles. My wife and I were watching Sleepless in Seattle recently. And they have actually a pretty stellar split diopter shot in that movie. And I started explaining why that shot was cool and what a split diopter shot is. And she wanted to murder me, like straight up kill me dead.
Oh, I guess she's just not your audience.
No.
She would not take the Ledbetter class.
No, it was that movie a couple times. The opening shot of Sleepless in Seattle is awesome. And I just said out loud, I was like, whoa, that shot was crazy. And she was like,
I like that movie.
Shut up.
I like that movie. Again, it's a time when, even romantic comedies like that can actually have some aesthetic value at times.
Listen, there's a phrase that happens a lot in this household when I say stuff like that. She's like, save that for when you talk to Jay. That's what my wife says. Save that when you talk to Jay. Not right now. Like, we're just watching a TV show. And
no, but I had forgotten. I mean, I'd seen Sleepless in Seattle before, but I was like, this is like a well-made movie.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Right?
It's good. It's a good movie.
Jay?
Yes.
Before we get out of here, we're going to test your award season knowledge base.
0.
We just reviewed.
Nothing.
Which was Déjà Vu.
Nothing.
And the segment we like to call, it's an honor to get nominated. Jay, just answer the question. Did Déjà Vu get nominated for any Oscars?
No, between this being a very stylized film, getting a pretty poor reception from critics at the time, and being a genre movie, I'm assuming this got absolutely nothing.
It got absolutely nothing. That's correct.
Okay.
What is the Rotten Tomato score for Déjà Vu? Don't look it up.
I know it wasn't very well received. And this was also during a time where Rotten Tomato scores were lower back then.
Yes.
I actually think people need to really do some research into the inflation of Rotten Tomato scores over the last.
I feel that.
years.
Listen. I'm going to just say this right now. There's a lot of great people that are getting the opportunity to be able to put their work.
I agree with you 100%.
Up on that platform, the visibility, and not having just a bunch of white male critics up on that side and having diverse opinions and whatnot is great. I think that as speaking as someone that has been given the opportunity to put their stuff up on that platform, it's been very beneficial, and it gets people a lot of different opportunities that they never would have had before, especially from publicists and whatnot, to be able to give them the opportunity to get screeners and other things and to get into critics groups. That being said, these grades are ridiculous. And everything's in the 80s and 90s now. There's not actually like a legit, even like Metacritic in a certain way. There's no legitimate way to find out whether there is actually a consensus on a movie anymore, because either people are very easily impressed, or they don't actually stick their neck out on an opinion, or they're not, media literacy enough to look into a movie and actually pick it apart left and right. Or there's just simplistic reviews out there now, man, that just don't tap into what it used to be. And I'm not saying that this the Rotten Tomato score for Déjà Vu was 56 at the time. And there's been obviously some reviews that come in, but and then like Man on Fire, we talked about it. It's sitting in like the 30s or 40s, you know what I mean, which is crazy. But
that is obscene. But I get it at the time.
It's also
I get it at the time.
It's a fascinating time capsule of a thing. Then but it also gets into this question I have with regard to any type of movie review aggregator out there, whether it be Rotten Tomatoes or even Metacritic. is consensus even really a good thing?
No.
When it comes to, I feel like I'm at a point now where I get more fascinated by a movie that comes in that maybe has like a 50-something% on Metacritic and it's in the yellow. Now, but if I'm seeing that as, okay, it has a lot of people giving it 100s, then it has a lot of people giving it like 10s out of 100, like that, then I get intrigued, because that just seems like an interesting kind of thing.
I mean, Brendan, the if movies are in the 70s and 80s now on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm like, I should probably check that out, because it's not 90 or 100% with 180 critics that have just gone gaga over this thing because they've been told to, or they saw their friend like it, or they had a good experience or whatever. I mean, obviously the film festival stuff can be like that for some things, but also there's good movies out there. I don't know. I just see like some movies and I go like, that's that high on that platform, because yes, it's good. I think it's good that a movie like Déjà Vu has a 56%, because when we can do an exercise like this, literally close to 20 years later, and be like, the world was not ready for this. It was not ready for. Yeah. And that's the Tony Scott
most
brand.
Fun thing to kind of rediscover.
Yeah.
But I always liked Man on Fire, though. I remember seeing that when I was
me too.
teen.
But like
I didn't appreciate it the way I appreciate it.
I'm glad that all of our friends are on that app, but sometimes, man, when everybody's on it, I mean, there's some people
look, the reality, and it's an understandable reality. If that is kind of your goal, is to become a visible film critic, you are incentivized
to get on that app.
Good reviews.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's also the timing of when people are writing these reviews, because a lot of it is also, okay, if you're close to seeing it in like a premiere like setting, there's a certain level of excitement that might conflate the reaction a little bit, because it's all about these like I feel like in many ways
the instant reaction
idea of instant reactions and instant social media reactions that lead into the main reviews are now bleeding into the main reviews, as if there has to be some consistency there. And that's not to say that there's a lack of like there should be a lack of consistency between them. I'm not trying to say that someone gives a very positive instant reaction that means that they should now pull it back and be more serious and more critical about it in their written review. If it's the same thing, then they genuinely feel that way, that's fine. But I think that creates a level of excitement and a level of desire to get there first that just feeds into the written reviews that then get published on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and then you have
the last thing. I will say one more thing, and then Ryan, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'll allow you to say whatever you want.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I think nowadays, they're among a good number of critics. I think there's a level of insecurity and wanting to be legitimized. And one of the ways that people think they will be legitimized is by being quote unquote right, in the sense that if they agree with the consensus, then they were right about the movie and they will be legitimized as correct. Because you see a lot of times now, if somebody puts out a negative review of a film that fans adore, they will get bile thrown at them, just like hatred. And so there's a lot of pressures in many different directions that are making Rotten Tomatoes obsolete.
Well, I mean, there is the point of it as well too. There's multiple other factors. I mean, like there's the fact that there's the influencer out there, and so if a PR team sees a negative reaction to a movie, there's a likelihood or a threat or an internal threat of potentially not being able to see movies from that company going forward. There's like group or hive mind thinking, like you're kind of talking about there, Jay. There's the fact that
look, when PR people come to me and are like, "What did you think about the movie?"
I tell them straight up, I don't like it.
I always do, but there's that moment of hesitation where I'm like,
should I say it?
Should I just use kid gloves and be like, you know what? I didn't love it. Like with Ghostbusters Afterlife. I remember walking out of that movie.
Oh my God. You haven't brought this up for a couple of episodes.
Or no, not Afterlife, Frozen Empire.
Yeah.
I walked out of the movie. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And as I was walking out to the press person, I was like, all right, do I just say like, wasn't really for me, didn't grow up with Ghostbusters or whatever. And then I got up there and I was just like, I really, really did not like that. I found it cheap. I found it like blah 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 blah. I wrote a whole review. You can find it on awardswatch.com. Great website. D-, but there is
Not
that,
a good movie. It's
there
one of
is
the worst
that
of the year.
pressure. Yeah, and I get it to a certain extent, but
I do too. I think it's just maybe the thing that has to change too is the general public's perspective of critics. What is our goal? Our goal is not to tell you whether a movie is good or bad. It's not about whether we're right or wrong. It's about offering a perspective that gives you a new view on something.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the goal of a critic, and I feel like there are enough people out there that don't, I guess, notice that. I guess there's just a lack of awareness of what that goal is, sadly.
Well, I think there's just a bunch of people that like what you're saying, Jay. If you put a negative review out of something, then people just take a screenshot of your grade for it and be like, "Look at this dumbass motherfucker," or whatever, and just like bombard you with hate and everything. And it's like we're the whole like.
when you know
see,
you're
this is why
yourself up to that, it's hard.
I think the fandoms and online stuff too also hurt it. It's just like being like, look at these critics; they think they're better than all of us because they, you know,
exactly.
da da da. And there's the fear of that
totally
too.
become a thing.
You know, but then there's
skills.
Yeah, I mean, there's just
all that stuff.
No, and then there's also just some people that don't have good taste. Like straight up. Like, I mean, to be honest, you're like, I see some people on there. I'm like, I don't know if you've.
Okay, Armin White.
I'm just saying. Doesn't have
trying to
good
think
taste.
who would be the funniest person that's been on our podcast to say has bad taste.
No.
You know what? I'm going to abstain from that one.
I was just gonna say, don't dig a hole.
Sophia. I can do it to Sophia. That's allowed.
Yeah, that's allowed. But no, I just this is a long way to say that's the Rotten Tomatoes score for Déjà Vu. And
did I even guess?
No, I just said it.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Which is 56%.
56, yeah.
I feel like, but again, this would probably be 86, and then it'd be like Denzel Washington, or whatever, you know. But I like that. I like that. You know, I like that they're lower, but also I understand too that like
I still think some people would find it aesthetically off-putting,
or they would find it maybe complicated.
even though it's way.
I mean, that was the kind of thing
intense than his last.
I mean, that was the kind of thing with like Tenent, which is like, you know, people love Nolan, but like that is one of his lowest rated movies because people aesthetically and just story wise, they just couldn't get into it. So, you know, thought it was too much. And so this is, I think, a much more simplistic version.
You know what I call those people?
Fools. Fools.
That's a perfect way to round that out. That is a cherry on top right there. Jay is so good at those cherry toppers.
You guys wouldn't nominate this for anything, right?
I would. I like it better than every Best Picture.
From 2006?
I am not kidding. Yeah.
I'm gonna pull this up. I'm gonna literally pull.
I looked it up.
Okay, what is it, Jay?
I no longer have it in front of me.
Okay,
so The Departed won.
Yeah. Babel.
Yeah.
Letters from Iwo Jima.
Letters from Iwo Jima is good, but I like this more.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, I like this less than that. I like that movie fine, but
The Queen.
I will admit, have not seen The Queen.
You haven't seen The Queen?
No.
Do you watch The Crown?
No.
No. Brendan, you watch The Crown? Did you ever watch The Crown?
No, I have not.
Because it's Peter Morgan did The Queen and he also did The Crown. I mean, I don't know if I would put Déjà Vu in a Best Picture.
From the perspective of a movie like this getting in Best Picture, I get it, but I like it more than all.
I like it more than those 5 movies. Yeah,
I'd still take Letters from Iwo Jima, but I do like Déjà Vu more than the other 4.
If we were doing an expanded 10 in a lineup, Déjà Vu would be in my 10. I would do 10.
Look at my favorite films from 2006.
Déjà Vu would be up there. This is a fun movie to throw into a 10.
This is a popular. What's my favorite 06 flick?
Oh, mine would be Children of Men.
I think that was my number 2. I think Brick was my number 1.
Brick's good. Talk about a guy. That guy went on to make Looper.
Oh, I mean, come on.
Miami Vice, baby.
Come on. I was just about to say.
Well, you're a fiend for mojitos.
Come on. That is.
Actually,
it is appropriate that Brendan is on for this episode because he recorded that episode with me, which is the single worst podcast I've ever recorded.
That was so awkward. That was
So
so
right in
awesome.
session film if you want to listen to it.
Or don't, or
don't. It's up to you. The choice is yours. We'll leave it up to the audience.
Pretty good films from 2006, and I think
Prestige.
most of them were not really Oscar players. I think most of the best films from that year were not in the Academy Award conversation. I love Brick.
Yeah.
I love Voltaire, which I guess kind of was.
Voltaire's awesome.
Voltaire's
The Proposition, I think, is amazing. Pan's Labyrinth, of course. A lot of good stuff there.
Prestige.
Inland Empire, a little David Lynch. I love Apocalypto. I think is very good.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Half Nelson, Man Push Cart, United 93.
Crank. Hello.
That's right. You're
J
big.
movie right there.
Love
Big.
Crank.
Good German.
I
wait, no,
actually
not-
kinda like
Not Good German. The Good Shepherd.
I was going to
Good
say the Good
Shepherd.
German came
Yeah.
out this year.
Was
Yeah.
the Good Shepherd the year before?
I don't know.
I
I
mean,
mean,
Marie-
there's some fun
Marie-
ones. Southland
Marie
Tales, I
Antoinette?
think is very
Marie-
fun.
Marie-
Devil Wears
Marie-
Prada, good movie.
No, Good Shepherd was this year, and that is a damn good movie.
Well, so was the Good German. So
I listen.
One's good, one's not.
One's good.
I
One's
like
not.
the Good German. And
The Good German's fun. I like the Good Shepherd a lot. Have you seen the Good Shepherd recently, Jay?
No, it's been a while, but I
I honestly need De Niro back in the director's chair. I feel he was so good. Bronx Tale and this. Those are good movies.
he should have directed Bad Grandpa. Or was his Dirty Grandpa?
No, it was Dirty Grandpa.
Bad Grandpa was the Jack
It was the Johnny Knoxville thing. Yeah.
Spike Jones.
Yes. My wife reminds me all the time that Spike Jonze is part of that alliance of men.
I wrote an article about 10 years ago called Spike Jones, the Existential Jackass,
I love that.
which was kind of about the thesis of Spike Jones.
Oh,
I thought that was a good title.
Little Children's this year. You guys seen Little Children?
I haven't seen Little
Field.
No, I need to.
Good movie. George Miller, Happy Feet.
What's the worst movie that came out this year?
Um,
Employee of the Month. Remember
I
that
don't
one?
follow. I don't follow worsts.
Dane
I
Cook.
try to see things I think I'm gonna like.
I'm just looking at my rankings of which ones I ranked lowest.
Blood Diamond.
RV.
RV. Jeez.
The Benchwarmers.
Oh my God, the benchmarks.
Well, I think we can safely say Deja Vu is better than all of these.
Superman
Agreed.
Returns.
Agreed. That's enough.
Oh, you know what else came out this year? Pirates 2, Dead Man's Chest. Love that movie.
Yeah,
Marie
good film.
Antoinette.
I thought that was 2005. Was that?
Nope, it's
2006?
this year. It's this
Oh.
year. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
No, because 07 is when
At World or the World's End. At World's
at
End.
World's End.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
The other World's End.
5 out of 5 movies for me. I love those.
All right, we're
movies.
done.
All right, Brendan, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet, my friend?
I mean, if people want to hear some Deja Vu, I think you and Jay should talk about where they can find in-session film stuff on the internet. Y'all have done this before. Y'all have done it before. But anyway, okay. I'll take the reins.
Can I remember that? I would have to pull up that document, and it would be a while.
That little script that we all had.
We all had the script, and I was just like, God, if I get this wrong, a man with a dart is going to hit me in the neck. Like, I always feared getting that wrong every week. I think I got it. I mean, I never got it fully right till like the last 2 years. I think,
you get into a habit of it. You get into a rhythm of it. But yeah, In-Session Film, you can find everything we do at InSessionFilm.com. That's where we house everything from our written content as well as our podcast reviews. We're also up on YouTube now. You can subscribe to us there for some of our video content that's complementary to our podcast content, which is also available on all the streaming platforms such as Spotify and whatnot. We talk about pretty much anything film topic related on our main episodic shows, but we also do main movie reviews of some of the new releases out there and have a few other fun segments with our other podcasters, whether it be around Chasing the Gold, something you're very familiar with, Ryan. I know that was something that was very close to you. We keep that going as strongly as possible, as well as our great female groups for our Women in Session podcast, talking about other various topics. So we do a lot of content. We sometimes have like 4 various episodes come out a week, keep ourselves busy, but you can find everything at InSessionFilm.com or at InSessionFilm on all the social medias. We're very busy everywhere.
Brendan, do you have like a recommendation for all the folks out there? It could be maybe a new release or something older that you watched recently.
We always do a rec a week.
Yeah, I could do a rec a week for everybody.
A rec a week. Wow, that sounds like a great band name right there. A rec a week.
Ooh.
Well, you know, myself and JD, my co-host on In-Session Film, we are about to be doing our mid-year report for the year 2024. So, have you all seen the movie Evil Does Not Exist?
Yes.
No.
The new
I have not.
Hamaguchi film.
Yes, I have.
That is a film I recommend because I want people to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about movies that whether you like them or not, they stimulate conversation. And I'm recommending something like that because not only is it the mid-year report, I want people to start seeing some pretty good things and hopefully they enjoy something like this. But the art of a great film is when you can talk about it. That's one of the most fun things that I feel like you can take from something like this. So I'm going to recommend that because I want people to talk. Talking's good. Perspective's good. Matters.
That movie is fascinating. I really want to watch it again because I saw it last year in Toronto, and the ending just sort of took me aback, and I have still yet to kind of collect full thoughts on it. I really want to watch it again. I liked it, didn't love it, but it's completely different than Drive My Car. Hamaguchi's a really, really exciting director that we have right now.
Agreed.
So
yeah, I think I was in the right mindset for it when I saw it. So
yeah,
I liked it pretty much right away.
I was like in the middle of a festival, which is like the worst time to watch a movie.
You can't crowd that in with other movies.
No,
that's you got to set a day for that.
I know. I really cannot wait to watch that one again.
It's good. I really like it.
J-Dog,
Yeah.
give us your handles and stuff and your rec for the week.
Yeah, lead with Letterboxd, J Ledbetter on Letterboxd. I'm the editor-in-chief of JimCaviezelRocks.com, so check out that website. At Twitter, at Mr. J Ledbetter. Movie recommendation of the week. I was lucky enough to see The Heartbreak Kid in a movie theater.
Oh, man.
And that was a lot of fun. I will say mild disappointment because I wasn't sure how they were going to screen it. And
they showed the Ben Stiller cut and stuff.
In my heart of hearts, I was thinking maybe this will be the 35. But then, they had some speakers beforehand and they were like, I'm telling you, I think there are 3 copies of a 35 millimeter print of The Heartbreak Kid in the world left. So what we watched was a 16 millimeter scan. So not ideal, much better than the DVD. So definitely the best format I've ever watched the movie in. And it is truly, I think, one of the funniest movies ever made. One of my favorite comedies ever. Jay, I can't believe that they don't have some sort of restoration of it.
Jay, they got to figure this out.
It's crazy. Criterion, just figure it out.
Just spend the damn budget. I don't want any movies for the next year from Criterion. They need to save this one because if this one disappears, I'm going to be so angry about it. It is a masterpiece.
It was a very interesting kind of backstory of how this scan came to be. They restored this 16 millimeter print. The person who restored it bought it for like $50 at a garage sale or something, and restored it. And the audio is a tad tinny. The print, it looked good, but not 35 millimeter.
Just needs a team to work on it.
Sealed. Yeah. And the 35 millimeter print will just look better naturally. Yeah. But it was still an amazing experience. I just think that movie's hysterical. Charles Grodin, that's one of my favorite comedic performances ever. So check out that. It's very hard to watch. So, sometimes you don't have to feel bad about torrenting, folks. I will say that. Yeah. So go check out The Heartbreak Kid.
Great movie. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work at AwardsWatch.com. If you like podcasts, we do the main show, and that releases on Mondays. 5 stars on iTunes and Spotify. Go to the website over at AwardsWatch.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Best place to get all of our news, reviews, interviews, and all that stuff delivered over to you guys, including these podcasts. My recommendation of the week is actually tied to Jay's. In that
the Ben Stiller Heartbreak Kid?
No. In that it also stars Charles Grodin and it stars Robert De Niro.
Little Midnight Run?
It's
a great movie. I watched that recently too.
I watched that recently. Wife had never seen it. Put it on. Just a damn good movie.
About an agreeable, entertaining movie.
I mean, we don't just get a movie where we're all just like, yeah, that's like a good B+, A- effective damn movie, and it's funny. And
Grodin.
I love him in that movie. I love that how frustrated he can get De Niro in this. I think De Niro's perfect. I mean, it's got people we love in it. It's got Joey Pants.
Joey Pants, of course.
It's got Philip Baker Hall.
Yeah.
It's got Dennis Farina.
We love Farina.
Oh my God!
Remember he had a whole sitcom to himself. He was the star of a sitcom.
Who, Farina?
Yeah.
What was it called? I don't know.
Might have been called Farina.
Farina.
I'm not kidding.
No, I didn't know that at all. Anyway,
That's hilarious. Wouldn't be surprised though.
please get the 4K that's out there for that. See, that's what there should be a 4K for Heartbreak Kid to go along with this one, because the 4K for this is great. This movie's so much fun. It's just 2 hours of De Niro trying to get Grodin to L.A. Because it's like a bail bondsman. It's so funny, and it's the fastest 2 hours I've had watching a movie recently, outside of Déjà Vu.
It was called In-Laws. I'm sorry.
It was called In-Laws. Okay.
But there was a commercial where it was like...
it was like, it's just Farinas.
No, it was like...
Oh, and he was like dancing?
Farina.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good.
It was good.
See, marketing's just not the same as it used to be, Jay. But anyway, go see that. Really great movie. Really fun. It's on Amazon Prime as of the time we're recording, too, so you can go watch it on there. Stream it as well, too. But next week, we will be back, and we will be wrapping up our Tony Scott movie series. We will be talking about Unstoppable. And we're super excited about
Last
that
ep.
Sad. Last ep. Sad, but it should
be
be
fun, Ryan, watching Tony Scott movies.
Yeah, you know what? The summer's been really damn
great.
good, because it's been the summer of Tony. It's going to end for us here really soon, and we're sad to see it go. But we'll also be back next week to talk about the next movie series that we're going to be talking about.
Well, let me tell you,
week
it's
after.
going to be different than Tony Scott.
It's going to be a tonal shift.
And everybody
That's for
go
sure.
listen to InSession Film.
Yeah.
Watch InSession Film. They're the best.
Thank you.
Go listen to those guys.
You know what wouldn't exist without InSession Film?
This podcast.
This podcast.
Yep. And so we thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.